West, the 9 to Noon Show with Greg Hughes on Highland Radio.
Welcome along to the 9 till Noon Show. It is, in fact, Michaela, Clarke in today for Greg Hughes. A very good morning to everyone listening and to everyone watching along on our online stream as well. What a beautiful morning it is. The sun has been shining. It looks a bit dull out there now, but it has been shining for most of the morning here at the mountain top, and hopefully it will continue for most of the day. You can get in touch with the show by calling 9125,000. You can text or WhatsApp 086 60 25,000 or email comments at highlandradio.com. And as mentioned, the show is streamed on our website highlandradio.com and our social media channels, so you can watch along for the next 3 hours if you wish. We're going to start off though with a look at the papers today. The Irish Independent: Gallagher sues for damages over GAA president's email is the headline there. Gaelic football coach Rory Gallagher has formally initiated a High Court action against the GAA and its president Jarlath Burns. A plenary summons outlining a claim for damages was lodged with the High Court in recent days. It also outlines how Mr Gallagher, aged 44, is seeking an injunction restraining Mr Burns or other agents of the GAA from inducing clubs not to hire him as a coach or manager. The legal action arises after Mr Burns' intervention via an email in Mr Gallagher's appointment as a coach with the Naas senior football team. It'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. It has been talked about so much, and obviously it is born out of allegations made by Rory Gallagher's former wife about domestic abuse, and concerns then were raised by Jarlath Burns about his appointment with the Naas football team, and subsequently then he did miss out on the job. So it'll be interesting. We'll set a precedent then going forward, and we'll have to watch this space to see what happens there. Looking now to the Irish Daily Mail: 2/3 of new GPs want 4-day week. Young medics more prone to burnout, raising fears about black spots in care. Younger GPs intend on working fewer patient-facing hours than older doctors, with the government warned to factor this shift into workforce planning. A new Department of Health report highlights burgeoning research from across the globe, which suggests newly qualified doctors wish to take on shorter patient lists than their predecessors. This change in preference, which is often to allow for more research work and upskilling in general practice, means that for every GP who retires, 1.1 recent graduates will be needed to meet their working hours. That's a bit worrying for all those who are constantly on the phone trying to get an appointment with their GP, to know that they in fact want to reduce their working hours. I know in my own GP surgery there's a sign up now on the wall that says due to GP shortages only emergencies will be dealt with, and that doesn't instill much confidence if you do need care. And obviously you don't want to attend the emergency department. As you know, it is an issue that hopefully the GP can solve, but yeah, I'm sure that will be worrying for plenty of people. I know Greg is contacted regularly by people who can't get a GP appointment, or told they have to wait days, or just simply there's no GP appointments available. In the Irish Daily Mirror: vape and quit cigs plan goes up in smoke. The number of people aged 15 to 24 using both soars. So the dual use of cigarettes and vapes has more than doubled in Ireland in the last 10 years, and more than 20-fold among those aged 15 to 24, a study has found. Researchers also found consumption is no longer associated with a sign of smokers intending or trying to quit. The study by a team of health experts found young adults aged 15 to 24 had gone from having the lowest odds of using e-cigarettes of any age group in 2015 to the highest by 2023. The same trend was found for individuals who engage in the dual use of both tobacco products and vapes. Researchers said this threatens the progress towards a target of the prevalence rate of smoking falling below 5%. I sometimes can't understand how people who have never smoked take up vaping and then become addicted to vaping, because obviously vaping was initiated and formed to help people quit smoking, but there are so many young people now that maybe perhaps they use it socially, you know, they're out having a drink and they maybe perhaps crave a vape, but it's the addiction then of the vape and how they use it every day. I know people, teenagers, young teenagers using vapes and use it for a prolonged period. It's nearly as if they actually use the vape more than they would smoke a cigarette. And it's just worrying, we know what's in cigarettes, we know the health warnings that come with them, but with vapes, we actually don't know what is in them, what the health effects, the effect it will have on health going into the future. So I think that's the worrying thing at the moment. Looking now to the Irish Times, we'll hopefully be touching on this a little later. Council Housing League Table to be set up. So the government will maintain an effective league table of how the 31 councils are performing on the delivery of social housing under a plan to go before Cabinet today. Minister for Housing James Brown will bring proposals for regular publication of data on the performance of councils in constructing social housing on local authority land, especially on the delivery of own-built homes. While almost half of the city and county councils exceeded their Housing for All social housing targets last year, all local authorities performed poorly when it came to the self-build targets. A total of 5,065 homes were self-built by local authorities between 2022 and 2024, only 18% of the target of 27,400. That is a huge shortfall there. And again, similar to the GP shortages, this is something that comes up in council meetings all the time, comes up in special housing meetings, the shortage of houses. And, is it a resources thing? We see housing developments completed and they're announced to great fanfare. But these projects have been in the works for so long and there's such a great need then on top of that. So is it a resources thing? Why are the councils not meeting these targets? And, can the government not maybe possibly roll out sanctions then on local authorities who do fall short? And I mentioned earlier, Greg, being contacted by different listeners. This is the same scenario. I know there was a lady, she was living in rented accommodation and she was diagnosed with cancer. Her husband wasn't well and she had contacted the show to say that, she had to leave her home, but she had nowhere to go. She contacted the council and there was they had nowhere to provide a place for her to stay. And, we're falling well short then of the social housing targets that are being set. Looking now to the Irish Daily Star, woman arrested in Sarah murder inquiry. Police investigating the murder of pregnant mother of two, Sarah Montgomery, have made a second arrest. A 42-year-old woman was arrested yesterday in Belfast on suspicion of assisting an offender. A 28-year-old man who was arrested on suspicion of murder over the weekend remains in police custody. Police said they had been granted a court extension of a further 36 hours to question him. Miss Montgomery, aged 27, died at a house in Donaghadee, County Down on Saturday. Police have said both suspects were known to the victim. This is sadly another case of violence against women in Northern Ireland. I think, from what I can remember, Sarah has become the 27th female to be killed since 2020 in the north. And despite so much awareness about violence against females, there just doesn't seem to be any end to it. And I saw so many people posting videos yesterday saying, where are these protests now? I'm sure you'll remember the protests in Portadown and Ballymena, and it was claimed that they were in a stand against violence against girls and women, but they obviously turned into something else. So, if that was what they were intended for, there's serious silence there now in the wake of Sarah's death. Finally, the Irish Sun. Belfast hip-hop trio Kneecap will headline the main stage at Electric Picnic following their controversial Glastonbury appearance. The popular group join a star-studded festival lineup that already includes headliners Hosier, Chapel Rowan, Sam Fender, Fatboy Slim and Kings of Leon. I'm sure plenty of you will have seen that a criminal investigation has now been launched into Kneecap's performance at Glastonbury and Bob Villan as well. This is such a contentious issue and I think so many people have different views on Kneecap. While, they're raising awareness of Gaza and they're keeping Gaza in the spotlight, it's just the question, are they doing it in the right manner? I know so many people are divisive, on this. It is one of those things that you have a great conversation about it, but if you have any views on Kneecap or anything else we've been chatting about this morning so far, you can get in touch by texting or WhatsApping 086 60 25,000 or giving us a call on 9125,000. And you can also email comments@highlandradio.com. We'll be back after this short break.
Daily newspapers are courtesy of Cosgrove, Centra and Diner, Mountaintop, Letterkenny.
Grant's Shoe Shop Buncrana, proudly family run since 1926. From Clarke's to Skechers, Echo to Bugatti, we've got quality shoes for men, women and kids all under one roof. And guess what? The summer sale is on now. That means sizzling savings on top brands. Pop in today and treat your feet. Only at Grant's Shoe Shop, where tradition meets style. Main Street, Buncrana.
Hybrid, plug-in hybrid, electric. Don't get confused. Get excited with Toyota, Ireland's best-selling car brand. At Kelly's Toyota, Letterkenny and Mount Charles, you get the power of choice. There's our wide range to see, including the Toyota CHR and the all-electric BZ4X, with power-up boosters of up to €3,000 and flexible payment options available. So order now at Kelly's Toyota, Letterkenny and Mount Charles. Toyota, built for a better world. T's and C's apply. Best-selling claim based on latest figures.
A huge 3-day €1 million stock clearance marquee sale begins this Thursday the 3rd at McGinley's Furniture, Letterkenny. Sofas, beds, mattresses, dining sets, occasional furniture and more, all heavily discounted in store and even further reduced in the clearance marquee, where there's up to 70% off. It's for 3 days only, Thursday, Friday and Saturday from 10 until 6 daily, and it's first come, first served. So don't miss out at McGinley's Furniture, Portling Business Park, Letterkenny.
Highland Radio Time Checks brought to you by EirGrid, the operator and developer of Ireland's electricity grid. EirGrid, powering up communities, powering up Ireland. The time is...
The time is 9:15. Now, it's emerged that some employees are paying online for sick certs without an assessment from a doctor. These are being carried out by phone or video consultations, even though the Department of Social Protection refuses them for social welfare schemes because they do not meet the standard required. Now, I am joined by multimedia reporter at the Irish Independent, Dara Nolan. Good morning to you, Dara.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm good, thank you very much. So this is something that has gripped the attention of many, I'm sure. How did you first become aware of this?
So it was something that we decided to look into, myself and my colleagues Maeve McTaggart and Amy Malloy, just to kind of do a little bit more digging on it, because this is something that's becoming more and more of a thing, this kind of phenomenon of telemedicine that we've had really since the pandemic and since COVID. And we decided to just give it a look and say, let's try this ourselves and see what we find. And what we found was, like what you alluded to there, that there are sick certs that are being given out not only through phone and video call consultations, but oftentimes we found without any calls being made to us as well.
And you carried out an investigation yourself into this. Can you talk me through the process of how you obtained a sick cert?
So what I did was I went on 3 of these websites that offer sick certs online, and I filled out all of the forms that they had. And what I found through that process is that there isn't really a lot of consistency across the board on these. So one of the websites that I went to, the form was quite short, just a little bit of basic personal info, didn't ask me for any ID or anything. Filled out the form, paid €30, got a sick cert back within a couple of hours. The next one that I did, it was actually quite a robust form, I would say. Asked for quite a lot of detail, a lot of information, asked you for identification as well, which I think is a big thing. And then €40, so the price range kind of varies a little bit, but it's kind of in that €30 to €40 range generally. And then the final form that I filled out, again, another short form, but this was actually the only one out of the 3 that once I filled out the form and sent it off, I did get a follow-up call from a GP who I did speak to. We spoke for a couple of minutes over the phone. She asked me what my symptoms were, what medication I was on, and things like that. And also, I think very importantly, asked me, did I have a GP that I could go to in the event that I needed one as well. So really, the process is really quick, takes only a few minutes. You pay your money, and within a couple of hours, in most cases, you get your sick cert back without any consultation with a doctor.
But obviously then that last one you referenced is the only one that kind of was more or less properly concerned for your health, asking if you had a GP to go to then.
That's really how I felt, yeah. And I think it's important to stress that, look, we're all responsible adults here. I don't think the overwhelming majority of people that are accessing these services genuinely just need a sick cert for a few days that they're sick. But what we really found is that, and this is what we said as well, it is open to exploitation. And the other side of that as well is that I would like to think if you went to one of these services and said, I've maybe got chest pains or something, that you might get a follow-up call and they'll say, look, I can't give you a sick cert for this. This is something serious and you need medical attention. But I think at the end of the day, as well, a lot of these websites, even the ones that I went to that didn't give me a follow-up call for a consultation, do mention on their website that you can expect a call or a video call from a doctor. So I think it's a reasonable expectation if you go to one of these sites and get a sick cert that you'll have that peace of mind of, look, I'm going to have a phone call with a doctor for a couple of minutes just to make sure that everything is okay, and then I'll get my cert. And it's not just a case of pay the money, fill out a form, and away you go. Because I think at the end of the day, look, people want to know that they've made sure that they're okay and that they have that peace of mind.
But I think the fear, especially for employers, is that, telemedicine is relatively new. It has been around a long time, but people actually availing of it is relatively new. I know myself, I've only availed of an online GP, say, within the last year, and it was a good, positive experience. It was very thorough, and I felt as if it wasn't rushed, maybe as opposed to going into a GP. But I suppose the fear is that this could be abused. Anybody then could fill out that questionnaire online and just submit it. And the worrying thing is that the employers do have to accept these.
Yeah, that's the thing. And employers have been expressing concerns about this. And there is kind of a bit of a double standard in that employers are legally obliged to accept these sick certs. And yet, on the other side of the coin, you have the Department of Social Protection, who told us that these don't meet the thresholds for people who are claiming things like illness or disability benefit. So you do have a department within the government that are saying these types of certs, whether it's a phone consultation or no consultation at all, and just a review, that this doesn't meet the threshold and that it has to be done through an in-person consultation, and they actually have to see a GP. So I can totally understand where employers are coming from in that regard, because they, I suppose, really feel like they're probably footing the bill for people taking sick days in a way that it was easier before. And look, as I said, we're all responsible adults here, but I think someone, the medical council or another regulator, needs to step in and say this is the standard that these need to be held to, and there needs to be a standard for them across the board.
And has the Irish Medical Council come out and said anything to date?
So we went to the Irish Medical Council about this over the course of the investigation, and what they came back to us and said was that their guidance states that a doctor should only sign a certificate following a review of the patient's condition. But interestingly, what they told us was that because the words must aren't included in those guidelines, there isn't an absolute duty on the doctor to comply. So all they are is guidelines, really, telling the doctor this is what you should do. But because the word must isn't included in the fine print, there's no obligation on a GP. And so what that suggests to us really is that not only are they not obligated to carry out a phone consultation or a video consultation or even an in-person consultation, they're not even obligated to carry out a review like they're doing when we're filling out these forms and describing our symptoms.
And then in terms of an employee returning to work, do they just take that this is the end of the sick cert? There's no review, no follow-up then from these telemedicine companies?
There doesn't seem to be. Part of all of the forms that we filled out on the various websites over the course of the investigation, it puts the impetus on you, kind of like if you were seeing a GP for a sick cert in person. How long do you need the sick cert for? You just fill in a drop-down menu. I need it between this date and this date. And away you go. So look, it's nearly a month since we started the investigation. So it's a few weeks since I dealt with these websites and filled out with those forms, and I'm yet to get a follow up myself. So I think it's safe to say that there's no secondary communication after the fact to make sure that you're okay.
And do you think it is driven by a GP shortage, or people are seeing it as this is an easy way to get a sick cert?
I think, to be fair to people, absolutely. To be fair to both people accessing the service as a patient and to GPs as well. We've carried out other investigations into GP practices here at the Irish Independent, and we found that, look, the price of an appointment is going up all the time. GPs are their time is at a premium at the moment, so you can understand why they're using services like these, because it allows them to continue offering sick certs to patients while freeing up their time so that they can do other things. Because look, it's very hard to even get into a GP's practice at the moment. It's very hard to get an appointment even if you do have a GP. So I think it is, to an extent, born out of necessity. And then the other element of it as well is that this telemedicine industry was there by necessity during COVID, and I think because it's so convenient, it's just continued over time.
Well, Dara, thank you so much for joining us this morning and giving us an insight into that. That is Dara Nolan there, multimedia reporter at the Irish Independent, and you can read more on that story in the Irish Independent and online as well. A few of you have been in touch saying it's no wonder people are using this system. It's €65 to see the doctor and sometimes 25 for the sick cert. Yeah, like it is a cost issue as well, but as Dara was saying there, I suppose people just can't get in touch with the doctor, and when they need the sick cert, you know, by the time they get a doctor's appointment, it could be they could be out the other end of it. Doctors who issue certificates without due diligence should face professional repercussions, including investigations and potential impact on their medical registration. It's a money-making racket. But I think that's what Dara was alluding to there. The Irish Medical Council, you know, there's no stance on that as of yet, and you know, tougher regulations are needed. I suppose these companies could be based, the one I was talking about there, it was based in England, so these companies are everywhere, could be anywhere around the world. And then, you know, the regulations that we bring in Ireland, do they govern, you know, companies that are being used elsewhere in the world? So I suppose it's a wider issue that does definitely need to be looked into. Another listener says a major concern is when sick certs are issued based solely on a drop-down menu selection or self-reported symptoms with no actual communication or consultation between the patient and a doctor. This means the doctor hasn't properly assessed the patient's condition. They should be banned. Yeah, that's what Dara was saying there too, you know, compared to, he carried out 3 different investigations there, and it was only the final site that they actually did ask him, did he have a GP that he could follow up with. But I suppose it's hard to beat face to face with a GP or even that phone call to properly explain your symptoms and maybe to even ask further questions. But it's just this issue of using the sick cert on the online sick certs. You know, are people abusing it? It's hard to know if people aren't. Dara reckons that, you know, it is based on the GP shortage, but it is hard to not think that people are perhaps abusing it. Another listener says, as someone who owns a business, I'm delighted to have this system called out. We are plagued with staff that have nothing wrong with them getting them. It makes a mockery of the medical system. And I suppose as well, from a business perspective, maybe you'll get in touch as well. So if an employee produces a sick cert, do you pay them sick pay then, and can you claim that back? But if the Department of Social Protection doesn't accept these sick certs, have you been caught up in this? You know, could you let us know maybe a bit more on that, how that process works in terms of the department not accepting these online sick certs, but as an employer you do have to accept them. We'll be back with more just after this short break.
Get ready for big savings in the Hillary Summer Sale. Enjoy up to 50% off hundreds of made-to-measure blinds, curtains and shutters. Plus, there's €50 off your blind order when you choose electric, making controlling your blinds a breeze. And if you find the same product with the same service for less, we'll match the price. Book your free in-home appointment today at hillarys.ie. Don't settle for off the shelf. Let us take the stress away. It's what we've been doing for over 40 years. Hillary's Summer Sale. For the window wise. Conditions apply.
Hi, Paddy here at Shane Conley Cars in Donegal Town. Are you looking to upgrade your car? With Shane Conley Cars, you'll find makes and models for every budget. Great finance options, and we also accept trade-ins. Check out shaneconleycars.com or call in to us at Shane Conley Cars from Lonaher Road, Donegal Town.
At Restex Beds, we are celebrating 50 incredible years in business. And we are introducing our brand new Glenveigh mattress, comfort that's as legendary as our half-century legacy. Experience 50 years of bedding excellence at Restex Beds, Mountaintop Letterkenny. Restex Beds, leave the rest to us.
This July 18th and 19th, Gweedore comes alive with Salt Music Festival 2025. On Saturday 19th, experience The Stunning, the Sharon Shannon Big Band with Garen Noon, the Luke Combs Experience, and many more. For more information and tickets, go to saltfela.ie. Salt Music Festival 2025. 2 days, one place, great music.
Welcome back to the 9 till noon show. We referenced there while going through the papers that the Housing for All targets. So Donegal is the worst performing local authority when it comes to housing targets. New figures show that Donegal delivered just 46% of its overall housing target figure between 2022 and 2024. Out of a target of 534 homes in the county, 248 were delivered. To discuss this more, I am joined by Councillor Jerry McMonigal. Good morning, Councillor McMonigal.
Good morning, Michaela.
So, Jerry, this is an issue that you and many other councillors within Donegal County Council have continuously been speaking about. But when you see these figures now in black and white, it is stark.
Yeah, look, it is stark, but you know you have to also look at the difficulties we have in Donegal. We got off to a bad start, I suppose, opposed to anywhere else. After the crash, there was no house building whatsoever in Donegal. No investment for the government to allow the council to build. Council had money to buy land. So, you know, in recent years, this last couple of years, in fairness to the council, they've got their act together. They've put a strategy in place. They've acquired land and they've engaged with a wide range of developers. But unfortunately, like you say, the housing demand in Donegal is at crisis level, and we are not able to keep up with that. And that, along with the defective concrete blocks, and as I say, the many vacant houses we have around at towns like Letterkenny, due to the time of the crash and houses being repossessed by banks, and them houses still sitting there. Look, it was just a perfect storm. As you know, we have every 6 weeks we have meetings with the council now around housing, solely about housing, about the capital projects, about the projects that are in the pipeline. You would have heard yesterday yourself that there's somewhere in the region of 580 houses now in the pipeline. There's currently 300 actually being constructed as we speak. So we are moving in the right direction, but unfortunately we're way, way behind. When you look at County Meath yesterday, opened up 3 social housing estates, totaling 230 homes, and 85 million investment from from the government they have for this to happen. And then you measure that against the allocation of €2 million for the whole of Letterkenny for the council to purchase homes that are available for purchase in Donegal. It says a lot of where we are at as a county and where we need to get to.
And while you were saying there that Donegal County Council now is on the right track, when we look back when these figures were compiled between 2022 and 2024, what has changed then? Has the government given the council more resources?
Yeah, we have got some more resources. It takes an awful long time, but from actually going out purchasing land and then designing the actual development, and then getting the permission and the approval of the department, then putting it out to tender. That takes a number of months, and then when them tenders come in, sending that tender then back to the department for approval again for payment. So look, all of this adds up. It takes an extremely long time to get a project from an open field into houses being built. And we have asked for on many occasions and met with the department to try and in some way circumvent all of this red tape, to speed things up, not to look for so much approvals, and to give the council the money up front and allow them to go and source lands where they can, but also engage with developers, give them a fair price for the houses and have more turnkeys. And that's beginning to happen. Unfortunately for us, We have a substantial amount of people on the housing waiting list. Every day of the week, we are dealing with people who are in crisis situation with their housing. The high rents in the private sector is driving a lot of people into debt and danger, and they're getting evicted, nowhere to go. And, we are in a perfect storm at the minute in Donegal. And unfortunately, it's going to take at least another 18 months before we start seeing light at the end of that tunnel, where the projects that we currently have under construction will start to be finished, delivered, and allocated to people. So what you're asking people to do is be patient. In fairness to the council, the team there, the capital projects team, have put an awful lot of work into this. They've engaged with an awful lot of private developers out there, and there isn't too many of them who are in the market and are in a position to go and build. But those that are come across, unfortunately, a lot of red tape, and that slows up the process of building homes.
And do you think now, with these figures that have been published, that the government should review the processes that are in place in terms of that red tape, maybe particularly for counties that haven't fared well in this?
Yeah, look, we had the tenant in situ scheme that the government introduced. And then in the middle of introducing it, they changed the whole legislation around it and access and criteria for it to be able to access it. And then, as I say, they sent us in a number of months ago a paltry $2 million to purchase homes that are available, or to actually purchase the homes where tenants who were in situ and were being forced to evictions. The criteria that the government put in prevented us from buying a lot of those houses. You would have many a time it was raised on Highland Radio in relation to Ballymacool. We're down to maybe being able to buy one of those homes now. I mean,
and do you think specifically for Donegal that the defective block issue is feeding into this, or do you think that there are other spaces that the council could build houses?
Well, the fact that country block is, at the minute we have 80 social homes which are vacant, which we had to move the families out of and put them in other homes that we had because of the condition of the homes. The testing of new builds, of developments that we are doing ourselves, and what we're employing an agreement with contractors to build, we need to carry out a very strict regime of testing the blocks to ensure that those blocks are not contaminated, that they're not defective, and we don't have this ongoing crisis with defective blocks. So all of that there takes time. All of that adds to the delays. Unfortunately, some of the developers don't like that. They don't like that Donegal County Council is put a focus on testing blocks at different stages of the development. But I think there's an onus and it's incumbent on us to do that, to ensure that when we build homes, we pay for them and we put people in them, that they're going to be fit for purpose for many, many years to come, and we will not have a prolonged defective concrete block crisis on our hands.
And in terms of
there is a lot of anomalies for Donegal, and a lot of things that we need to look at.
Because I understood that in terms of the defective block issue, it was relating more to the purchasing of homes, but I didn't understand that, going forward now, building homes as well, that there needs to be a lot of consideration, which is quite obvious in terms of the blocks going forward. But there is, right across the country, this isn't the case. Is it just specific, obviously, to Donegal and the issue here?
Yeah, and possibly Mayo, but particularly in Donegal, where it's rampant, and it's affecting thousands of homes and families, of course. So it's incumbent on us as a council that when we're building houses, to ensure that them houses are not having defective blocks in them, and the testing regime ensures that there. And while it might delay the development, I think it's the right thing to do, because we don't want to be knocking them down in 10 or 12 years' time and having to build again. So there's that there, and there's just having a lack of finance in place. For a long number of years, we didn't have money in the council. The council was a lot of debt. It got itself out of that over the years. Unfortunately, we couldn't buy up lands to build council houses on, and we were dependent on the private developers. A lot of them went to the wall at the time of the crash, and some of them are only starting to come back now and dip their toe in the water. But we need to engage with them, and in fairness to the Capital Project, they have put out multiple advertisements around and expressions of interest to people out there who wish to sell land or wish to, contractors who are developing land and building houses. They come and talk to us about the turnkey or possible selling houses to us when they're finished. So a lot's getting done at the minute, but we're catching up with them. We have a long number of years to catch up with, and currently the amount of people we have in the housing waiting list, it's going to be a time before we start getting around everybody.
Yeah, and that obviously is hard for them to hear, and it feeds into another part of the discussion we're having here as well, that 2 homeless shelters is not enough to meet the demands in Donegal. So this, you were discussing this in recent days as well. So we have 2 homeless shelters, one in Letterkenny and one in Bundoran, which houses 43 adults and 4 families, according to figures from April. And there's a serious need for this to be expanded.
Yeah, there is a very much a serious need for it. And look, we have adopted a fairly good and robust homeless strategy. Unfortunately, it's not been invested in, it's not been resourced. And at the minute, we're doing what we've done when we used to have multiple hostels around the county that would periodically put people up who find themselves in homeless situations. There's been more focused on hostels that can take multiple people, that are regulated, that, as you would have heard, have security in them to ensure people's safety and health and well-being. And that they're unfortunately for us now, they're in one's in Letterkenny and one's in Bundoran. The council did say yesterday that they'll put expression of interest out there to people, that if there is anybody out there who would have a hostel of substantial beds that would be willing to engage with the council in relation to becoming that type of facility, then they're open to that conversation. We need that. Look, in the last number of days, I've met 3 different families who are on the cusp of being evicted. There's nowhere for them to go, absolutely nowhere for them to go. 2 of the families have been offered accommodation, which is outside their ability to pay. It's not a sustainable tenancy for them families, and there's no doubt in 2 months' time they will be in debt to thousands of euros because they can't pay the rent, and they will also be getting evicted. So this is what's happening every day of the week. It's not one here and one there.
Yeah.
It is right across this county. So we need to have better facilities. I've been calling for years. I mean, I remember bringing in a motion that we would purchase Glenini House, the time it was lying vacant, that could be used as a hostel. There was 21 bedrooms in it. There was kitchens in it. There was rest areas and TVs, lounges and all that. I mean, it was an ideal location for someone and our families, and we didn't have the resources, or we didn't have the money to purchase it. We couldn't get it off the department. So, it's the 2 in Bundoran and Letterkenny. I mean, if you're in Innishowen and find yourself homeless,
Yeah, it's far too far.
You're going to Letterkenny, and there was no room in Letterkenny, you're put to Bundoran, and vice versa. And that's not good enough. And look, it's a homeless hostel is supposed to be a temporary step. It's a stepping stone to full housing and housing being delivered for you. Unfortunately, what's happening now, because we have no houses, we haven't got enough of them. People are staying in these homeless hostels for over a year. I know people who's in a particular hospital for over 2 years. And this is not good for them, and it's not good for the stepping stone plan of someone coming out of getting evicted, getting into a hostel, and then being rehoused in a matter of months. So the plan isn't working yet, and it's not working because we haven't got enough places for people who find themselves temporarily homeless to be housed while we are in a position to offer them a more permanent home. And then on top of that, we have all the other issues with people who find themselves homeless, who find themselves homeless because of addiction purposes. And then it's getting the the help and support for them and the proper help and support.
And in terms of that, Councillor McMonigal, do you think that there should be a homeless shelter and then perhaps a different facility that could help people with addiction issues?
Yeah, well, look, we would have a step-down facility here in Letterkenny, in Carlin House, but it's not. The demand is such that it's full capacity all the time. We have no detox bed in Donegal. No detox beds. We have beds that are there temporarily, but there's no detox beds as such. And we need all of this. We need more resources. I've raised this at the Regional Health Forum in recent months. I've got the statistics there. And while they're saying that they have beds, and initially try and get people settled, and there's not full detox beds. Our staff, they help and assist in that, and we need more of that in Donegal, because I don't think it's right that we would put someone who's homeless as a result of an addiction into a hostel where there's a family there who are homeless because of their circumstances and financial circumstances. It's just not right the way they do things.
Yeah, it just seems there's an overall issue in terms of housing, in terms of support. There's just so much to be looked at. A listener got in touch to ask yourself why social housing has been omitted from the development plan.
Oh no, the development plan is there, and there's a reference to social housing. Of course, I mean, when you heard the plan yesterday, what our capital project and the ambition and the strategy there, and they build as I say, there's almost 300 houses under construction across the county at the minute. I mean, we have in the region of 150 in Letterkenny at the minute, which are under construction, which is great news, but unfortunately it's going to be the end of next year before a lot of them are being delivered. But it's happening right across the county. So there is a focus and an emphasis and a strategy around delivering social homes. It's just going to take that, as I say, the next 18-24 months. We'll have in the region of 500 odd homes built and delivered in Donegal. But the here and now is a crisis point, and that's what we have to try and work with. And look, could say also, Michaela, I have to say, in relation to the vacancy officer that the council employed about 18 months ago, it's been a fantastic success for us. They've went out and they've identified a lot of vacant properties. They've engaged with the owners of them. The Clarke County grants that's been introduced, the repair and lease scheme is there for people who may have homes, which say the likes of Meadowbank. Was there a number of homes there which are been vacant for many, many years. People who own them, and unfortunately the banks who own some of them, have been contacted. Some of them have repaired it and leased them back out, and there's people, families living in them. The same with the Clarke County grant. There's been a massive uptake in it. There's a lot of vacant houses that are being renovated and brought back into use, and that's to be. And
do we know, is
this
for social housing then, or they can lease it out privately themselves?
They can lease it out privately themselves, but the repair and lease scheme can be then, the council, you lease it back to the council for a number of years, and they use it for social housing. And look, and I would appeal to anybody out there who would have a home sort of like that there. They look at the repair and lease scheme. There's upwards of 70,000-80,000 euros that can be got to put the house back into use again and bring it, do all the renovation needs to be done, the fixing of it, and then you lease it to the council, and you will get then an income of that rent, that the council will be paying you. So look, it's a good scheme, and people should look at it. And we're trying to use every means available to get vacant homes back into use, and that's why, in the fairness to the regeneration team here in Letterkenny as well, you will see a lot of vacant properties now in Lower Main Street with for sale signs. Others have been bought recently by the private sector. I know the council has going to buy a couple, and we're working towards ending the vacancies and the dereliction. But it's not easy work, and it's drawn out work. But if people who have those vacant properties would just sit and look at what's on offer for them to bring the vacant properties back into use. It'll be of immense benefit to them financially, and it'll be of immense benefit to the people of Letterkenny and other towns that have vacant properties.
And just one final question. A couple of listeners have been in touch regarding brand new houses being built in Milford. Carndonagh and Carrigart have been mentioned. I know some of them are outside your area, but they say they've been built, but they're lying then for quite a while before people are housed in them.
Yeah, look, and in fairness, Councillor Aberdeen has been raised on a number of occasions around the vacant houses in Carndonagh. As has other councillors, have raised the issue about vacant houses here in Letterkenny. And whilst there are issues there, the council have assured us that they're working with those who own the houses to overcome them, those issues, and try and get them homes back into use. And look, it's like we said yesterday, see if it's a matter of a bit of extra money, or in some cases it's the testing of the homes have to be done. Then look, let's get it done. Let's seek the extra money that's needed, because it's crazy that there's 95 homes, I think, newly built that are sitting in Donegal that people could be in, and they're not in them. That's just crazy.
Yeah, it just does not make sense. Yeah.
No, it doesn't. And we implored the council yesterday to do what it needs to do to get those houses into use and get families in them, and start getting and then come back. Even for the council, they start getting and then come back on them. Like eventually, if we have to pay a few extra pound, look at this because of the crisis we're in, I think we need to do it. And we said that yesterday, and there was all the councillors are in agreement with that. We let the senior management team know what we think and what we would like to see done. And look, the ball's in their court now, and I know there's a couple of meetings happening over the next week or 10 days with different developers. Hopefully we will get some good news out of that.
Councillor Jerry McMonigal, thanks so much for joining me this morning. We'll be back with more just after this short break.
Plan something new at the start of the year? Well, who hasn't? Now's your second chance with the 252 registrations at iMotors. Take the wheel of the iconic Qashqai, the bold X-Trail, the sporty Juke, or go electric with the stunning Nissan Ariya. They're here and they're waiting for you. Visit imotors.ie today.
iMotors, fearless generation.
Driving on properly inflated tyres will reduce your fuel consumption, extend the life of your tyres, and it's much better for the environment. Get your tyres checked by a Circle ELT member today. There are almost 3,000 member outlets nationwide. Circle ELT, Ireland's tyre compliance scheme, and its members help recycle and recover over 4.5 million tyres every year. To find out more, visit circleelt.ie. Circle End of Life Tyres. Driving a sustainable tomorrow.
The 5th Letterkenny Blues and Roots Festival takes place from Thursday the 3rd to Sunday the 6th of July. 4 days of great live blues, roots and folk performances, featuring artists from Ireland and around the world. Over 70 gigs in 13 different venues, plus street entertainment on Saturday afternoon. Don't miss the Letterkenny Blues and Roots Festival from the 3rd to the 6th of July.
Highland Radio weather updates with McElhenny's. Find all your summer essentials from fashion and accessories to beauty and homeware at McElhenny's. Explore more in-store or shop online at mcelhennys.com today.
Today's weather largely dry with isolated showers and sunny spells. Sunshine will become more widespread this afternoon. Highest temperatures of 15 or 16 degrees. Now, I am joined by Christopher Bowe, Policy and Public Affairs Manager with FLAC. Good morning to you, Christopher.
Good morning.
So we're speaking on this occasion in terms of you have spoken out saying that the demand for FLAC services last year points to nothing less than a civil legal aid crisis. What is the situation?
So FLAC published their 2024 annual report yesterday. I suppose I should say first off for your listeners that FLAC is an independent NGO that promotes access to justice. And we do that in a few ways. We have a telephone information line. We run free legal advice clinics where volunteer lawyers and solicitors and barristers can provide people with legal advice. We undertake public interest litigation and have a number of targeted legal services for the traveller community, the Roma community and the LGBTQI community. And we also undertake policy and research work. So FLAC is distinct from the state system of civil legal aid, which is run by the Legal Aid Board. So last year in 2024, which is the year covered by our report, we received over 53,000 calls into our telephone information line during that year from people seeking basic legal information about their rights. Now, we were able to deal with over 11,400 of those queries, and they came in mainly in the areas of family law and employment law, and those are usually the top two areas where people seek information about their rights from FLAC. But it's clear from what we know about the number of calls we're getting in versus the number of calls we're answering that we're only able to deal with 21% of the queries that we're actually getting from people, which leaves around 40,000 people unable to access basic information about their legal rights. And what FLAC would highlight about this is that the state systems of civil legal aid run by the Legal Aid Board doesn't provide for the provision of this basic legal information to people. So the Legal Aid Board doesn't have a statutory power to provide people with legal information about their rights. And the reason we're so concerned about this is that our phone line and our legal advice clinics, they're what we'd call early and preventative legal services. So they can stop problems from arising to begin with. They can also mean that problems are dealt with early and that the worst consequences of them are avoided. They can also save people in the legal system money because it means that problems mightn't result in litigation. They mightn't end up going to court. So something we're emphasizing in this report is the need for the state system of civil legal aid to provide for these early and preventative legal services. We also think there's a strong argument to be made for the state system of legal aid to provide for targeted services. So a properly resourced national traveller service would be something we'd see a huge need for, given the demand for our own traveller legal service that we run. And another huge issue that we get, as I mentioned, the second highest area of calls and the area where people seek legal advice from FLAC is this area of employment law. So our legal advice clinics, where over 3,700 people received legal advice during 2024, they saw a 14% increase in the number of employment law queries they were receiving. But a huge concern for us is that we have nowhere to refer those callers beyond that legal advice consultation. And that's because the Legal Aid Board can't provide representation before tribunals like the Workplace Relations Commission, which deals with employment issues and discrimination issues as well.
And would you, in terms of that then, when you have nowhere else to refer them on to, or the amount of people that you can't actually deal with, do you feel that this deters people in progressing their cases?
That's a significant concern that we'd have, and something that we often hear on the phone line and in the clinics is from people who are trying to represent themselves against their employer or former employer in the Workplace Relations Commission. And they're often faced with an employer who has not just a solicitor, but they may have briefed two barristers as well, a junior and senior counsel. So that gives rise to a concern, what we'd call an inequality of arms, where people are trying to represent themselves against an employer who has a full legal team. So it gives rise to a number of concerns for us.
And in terms of, obviously, it would take a long time to, put enough resources in place to deal with these figures that you have outlined in your report. But is there anything in the interim that you believe could be implemented?
Well, we actually think the time has now come for reform in the area of civil legal aid. So reform is always slow in this area. There's a perception that seems to take hold that funding legal aid is just providing more money for lawyers, but we would view access to legal assistance as an essential public service and think we need to start looking at it in the same way as we look at health, as we look at education, and start thinking about resourcing it in those ways. And we think there's a huge need for innovation and some of the measures I outlined earlier on in this area. But as I said, there's a couple of impetuses for reform now, we believe. So in 2021, the then Minister for Justice, Helen McEntee, commissioned an independent review of the civil legal aid scheme. And they have now reported back this year to the current Minister for Justice, Jim O'Callaghan. So he has received the reports of the Civil Legal Aid Review Group, and he's currently reviewing them at the moment. At our launch yesterday, he says he's hoping to publish them as well and to receive feedback on them. There's also another impetus for reform in the Migration Pact. So that is these sweeping changes to international protection law that's coming from a European Union level. But those EU directives which form the Migration Pact actually provide for applicants for international protection to receive early legal assistance, and it'll be the responsibility of the Legal Aid Board to provide that assistance. So we think that shouldn't be just rolled out in the immigration area. We think that should be a mainstream part of the legal aid system, and it's important to emphasize that Migration Pact needs to be implemented within the next year. So we think the time has come for reform, and as we say, we want to see those changes across the whole system of civil legal aid. But our main concerns would be to remove these barriers on the areas, these limits on the areas where people can receive legal representation from the Legal Aid Board. So I mentioned the Workplace Relations Commission earlier, another area, social welfare appeals representation, and those representation before the Residential Tenancies Board. So that's one concern, this representation before tribunals. The other area is that we think the Legal Aid Board needs to be empowered and resourced to start providing these early services, because as the figures that FLAC has outlined in its 2024 report make clear, we just don't have the resources to deal with the queries. We're a small, independent, non-governmental organisation, so these need to become a mainstream part of the system. And then the final one is these targeted services for groups like the traveller community and the Roma community, because we know that communities who experience discrimination and disadvantage, they have higher levels of legal need, they have specific legal needs to their communities, and they also tend to experience groups of legal problems, what we call clustered injustice. So rather than the typical situation where people might just have one legal problem with, a neat solution, disadvantaged communities often have these groups of clustered legal problems that require a tailored approach to deal with them. So those are the three big changes we'd like to see in the system. And given the figures that come out from the FLAC report, the huge demand that we just can't reach, over 53,000 calls into our phone line in 2024, we think urgent action is needed in that area, and we think for a number of reasons the time has come for reform now.
Christopher Bowes, Policy and Public Affairs Manager with FLAC, thank you so much for joining us. Plenty of work to be done there. We'll be back just after the news at 10.
Rossview Interiors in Letterkenny are delighted to offer a limited quantity of sofas just in at unbelievable knockdown prices, with suites reduced from €2,050 to €1,250 and corner suites from just €1,350. There's also storage beds down from €650 to €450 and huge savings on a selected range of dining sets. So make your way to Rossview Interiors, Rossview Business Park, Letterkenny, just off the Polestar roundabout, as these bargains won't last.
Túr an dréimar in níos gara, lads.
Bíonn Rob ag tógáil tíche.
Túr an dréimar in níos gara, lads.
Bíonn sé ag sábháil tíche freisin. Tá dúracht ag baint le bheith de choracóir dóiteán áirithaocht. Ach mar a torad a chudaibli go deo. Fáimach faoi bheith de choracóir dóiteán áirithaocht i de phobal féin. Téach ag fireireland.ie. Teachtareacht ó Rialtas na Héireann.
Imagine this, toes in the sand at Old Head Beach. The thrill of zip-lining at Westport Adventure. Wandering colourful streets, ice cream in hand. Sailing across the calm waters of Clew Bay. The wind in your hair on the Great Western Greenway. Westport. Find your own adventure at destinationwestport.com.
This summer, the Big Top is calling. Summer Sessions Letterkenny presents the Human League, live on August the 21st for one unmissable night. Plus special guests including Nick Kershaw and the Undertones. And it's your last chance to grab the final tickets at summer-sessions.ie. Also rocking the Summer Sessions stage, the Saw Doctors with special guests. That's the Human League, August the 21st in Letterkenny, under the Big Top. Follow Summer Sessions Letterkenny on social media for all the latest updates.
Live, on air, online and on the Highland Radio app. This is Highland Radio News.
Good morning, it's Donna Marie Doherty with the 10 o'clock news. Donegal has been named the worst performing local authority in terms of social housing delivery. It delivered only 248 of its target of 534 from 2022 to 2024. 178 houses were built by Donegal County Council, while no houses were purchased under a turnkey acquisition. 31 social houses were built by an approved housing body in this county, and 16 turnkey acquisitions were made through an AHB. Finally, the 23 remaining houses were accounted for through the Part 5 contribution of developers. The figures come as Housing Minister James Brown is due to tell Cabinet this morning of plans for a new league table to track social housing delivery by all councils. Councillor Jerry McMonigal says the results in Donegal is of years of inaction.
After the crash, there was no house building whatsoever in Donegal. No investment for the government to allow the council to build. Council hadn't money to buy land. In recent years, this last couple of years, in fairness to the council, they've got their act together. They've put a strategy in place. But unfortunately, the housing demand in Donegal is at crisis level. And that, along with the defective concrete blocks, it was just a perfect storm.
The 42-year-old woman who was arrested in connection with the murder of a pregnant mother of two in County Down has been released unconditionally. 27-year-old Sarah Montgomery died at a house in Donaghadee on Saturday. The 28-year-old man was arrested on Sunday on suspicion of murder, and the woman who was arrested yesterday on suspicion of assisting offender was released. PSNI say both suspects were known to the victim. The head of the Irish Tourism Industry Confederation is disputing CSO figures suggesting a drastic decline in tourism numbers last month. The CSO reports the number of foreign visitors fell by 10% in May. Just 560,000 tourists arrived here according to the latest figures. But Owen O'Mara Walsh, Chief Executive of the ITIC, says it doesn't add up.
The numbers from the CSO for May don't quite align with industry data. Remember, we talk to airports and hotels and visitor attractions and adventure centres and all the different tourism stakeholders in the country. And they're reporting May and indeed year to date as being fairly flat, fairly stable, nothing particularly exciting up, but certainly not the double-digit decline that the CSO reporting. So there's a misalignment there of sorts, trying to get to the bottom of it.
Garda, the parent company of Kellygordon-based Nomadic Foods, has acquired Monsterland, a leading German ready-to-drink specialist. It's part of Clarke's strategy to build a European group of convenience food and beverage businesses. 100 people are employed in the county through Nomadic, and Kellygordon-based Alan Cunningham, who's the chief executive of Clarke and Nomadic Foods, says they're on track to sell more than 100 million units across Europe next year. The Finance Minister says no effort will be spared to reach a tariffs deal between Europe and America. The EU is meeting with senior officials in the Trump administration later as an end to the pause on tariff looms. Europe will be hoping to secure some exclusions for the 10% baseline tax, and Minister Pascal O'Donoghue is cautiously optimistic that a deal can be done.
It really is in the interests of both sides of the table that an agreement is reached. And as I said, Commissioner Sefcovic and the Commission has spared no effort in seeking to get such an agreement. I hope one can be reached, but I know a huge amount of work still does need to be done.
2 men were apprehended by police in Derry after failing to stop when signalled to do so. The incident occurred yesterday evening in the Springtown and Ballymagorty area. The police in question were assisted by drone support, several officers and the local community. And both men in question have been arrested on suspicion of a number of driving and drug-related offences. A 4-day working week, pensions and parental leave will be among the topics up for debate at a major trade union conference which starts in Belfast today. The Irish Congress of Trade Unions is unveiling a new vision for Ireland at its 3-day biennial delegate conference. The plan would see the government investing in strategic infrastructure, backing collective bargaining and supporting domestic enterprise. ICTU General Secretary Owen Reedy says their plan has 4 main pillars.
Number 1, a productive economy. Number 2, better jobs. It shouldn't be just any job, it should be good jobs. You're not going to have a productive, strong economy without high wages, high skills and strong collective bargaining. Number 3, economic security. We know as the economy changes, not every job can be saved. Not every job actually needs to be saved. Workers and families need to be protected as people move from one career to another. And the 4th one is economic resilience.
Looking now to weather, largely dry today with isolated showers and sunny spells. The sunshine will become more widespread through the afternoon. It's with highs of 15 or 16 degrees in light north to northwest winds. That's all for now from the newsroom. Back with headlines at 11 o'clock. The Obituary notices this Tuesday morning, July 1st. The death has taken place of Robert O'Brien, 11 McNeely Villas, Letterkenny. Robert's remains will be reposing at his sister Angela and CJ McGinley's residence, 7 The Grange Glencar, Letterkenny, today from 3 p.m. until 9 p.m. and tomorrow from 12 noon until 9 o'clock. Rosaries both nights at 9 p.m. Funeral from there on Thursday at 12:30, going to St Eunan's Cathedral, Letterkenny, for 1 p.m. Requiem Mass, which can be viewed live on churchservices.tv. Interment afterwards in Newlake Cemetery, Letterkenny. Family time, please, on the morning of the funeral. Family flowers only, please. Donations in lieu of flowers, if desired, to Medical 3 Ward, Letterkenny University Hospital, care of any family member. The death has taken place of John Hanlon, Drummonot, New Mills, Letterkenny. Removal from the Eternal Light Chapel of Rest, Mountain Top, Letterkenny, today at 1 o'clock, going to his family home. John will repose at his home from 5 p.m. this evening. Funeral from there for Requiem Mass on Thursday at 11 a.m. in St Columba's Church, Glenswilly, with burial afterwards in Conwall Cemetery. Funeral Mass can be viewed on churchservices.tv. Family time from 10 p.m. until 11 a.m. and on the morning of the funeral. Family flowers only, please. Donations, if desired, to the Donegal Hospice, care of any family member or Charlie McClafferty, funeral director. The death has taken place of Paddy Mongan, 61, Cashel Park, Lisnenan, Letterkenny, reposing at the Eternal Light Chapel of Rest, Carnamugga, Letterkenny, tomorrow from 4:30 until 6:30. Removal at 6:30, going to the Church of the Irish Martyrs, Gortley, Letterkenny, arriving at 7 o'clock to repose overnight. Requiem Mass on Thursday at 11 a.m. Burial afterwards in Newlake Cemetery. Mass can be viewed on the Church of Irish Martyrs YouTube channel. The death has taken place of Margaret Ethna McLean, Lower Drummaweir, Greencastle. Margaret's remains will repose at her home today from 12 noon until 9 p.m. Funeral from there tomorrow morning at 10:30 for 11 a.m. funeral mass in St Mary's Church, Ballybrack, followed by interment in Ballybrack Cemetery. The death has occurred of Bernadette Bernie Malloy, 32, Ardcolm Kill, Letterkenny, reposing at her late residence at 12 noon today, concluding with rosary at 9 o'clock. Funeral from there tomorrow, going to St Eunan's Cathedral for 1 p.m. Requiem Mass, which can be viewed live on churchservices.tv, followed by burial in Conwall Cemetery. Family time, please, on the morning of the funeral. Family flowers only, please. Donations, if wished, to the Painting Fund, St Eunan's Cathedral, care of Pascal Blake, funeral director. The death has occurred of Anthony Doherty, Main Street, Dunloe. Remains are reposing at his home today from 12 noon until 8 p.m. Funeral Mass tomorrow at 12 noon in St Crona's Church, Dunloe, with interment afterwards in the adjoining cemetery. House strictly private, please, on the morning of the funeral. For family information and more details regarding wakes and funerals, please go to highlandradio.com.
Sábhálan agus aithríonn an Dionú Orgán Bahadini. Cílíonn an tathúd líon éireann go measfar mas duine fástathú gur Diontar Orgán thú nuair áin tú bás. Is láatsa an ráha a bheith de Diontar Orgán ach tá sé tábhachtach go mbeidh do bhaintear ar an eolas faoi de bhíonta. Tá chlárán do dhaoine nach mín lo an orgán na Dionú. Téigh hse.ie/organ donation nó cur gléoch ar HSE Live ar a 8 an 9 de 7 an 9 de 7 an 9 chun tuile eolas a áil ón HSE.
The county's #1 talk show, The 9 till Noon Show on Highland Radio.
Welcome back to the 9 till Noon Show this Tuesday morning. It's Michaela, Clarke in today for Greg Hughes. Looking now to some of your comments, we as a family have shown an interest in the council buying our family home. We are in a prime area and the house is a bungalow. We first contacted the council in October and have not heard anything since. That relates to our discussion we were having just before 10 with Councillor Jerry McMonigal in terms of the number of social homes that have been built by Donegal County Council between 2022 and 2024. Another topic we were discussing was online sick certs. A listener says, have you tried to get a doctor's appointment? Sick people cannot get a doctor's appointment for weeks with practices they have been registered with for years. Yeah, that is Absolutely the case. The council should not be allowed to buy affordable houses. I can't buy a house for my family on an average wage because the council can buy them in cash before I get a mortgage approved. This isn't fair. All my money needs to go on rent instead. Another listener says maybe if the councillor would catch himself on and organise that the quarries be tested, then there'd be no problem with the blocks after they are built. I think that's a government and possibly an EU regulation issue, that there are no regulations in place governing the blocks at the moment. Ask Jerry McMonigal whatever happened to the 17 houses approved for Garda some years ago. Houses are being built but are extremely slow at being given out. My friend was appointed a council house almost a month ago and she is still waiting on the keys. Jerry McMonigal is using the economic crash of 2008 as an excuse for their utter inactivity regarding social housing. Social housing has been omitted from the county development plan for over a decade. Councillor McMonigal did allude to there during the interview that the council got off to a bad start, that there is funding issues, that more resources are needed from the government in terms of the delivery of social homes. Another listener says, last year I went through a really bad time with my mental health. Perimenopause hit me and I didn't understand what was happening. Thankfully, I had a good support behind me and I'm doing amazing now, back to myself again. I have 2 children and even in the days I didn't want to get out of bed, I had to. They needed me. The point I'm making here is looking at me, I looked fine, but I was sick. But it was a sickness only I and my family could see. We talk a lot about hidden illnesses that people do appear to be absolutely fine, but there are so many hidden illnesses that people do suffer with each day. Morning, in their infinite wisdom, the so-called government of the people have decided to increase the student fees back up to €3,000, again hitting the middle when we have billions in the bank and the rich are getting richer. Hi there, at the risk of sounding like an old fuddy-duddy, am I the only person who feels that Irish singer CMAT's song Take a Sexy Picture should not be aired on the national broadcaster as it contains the line take a sexy picture of me and make me look 14? Surely the sexualisation of children and normalisation of paedophilia is unacceptable. So the lyrics go, can't you see me with her? Take a sexy picture of me and make me look 14, or like 10, or like 5, or like 2, like a baby. Whoever it is that you're going to love, so you'll be nice to me. What's your opinion on this? Let us know by calling 9125,000 or texting or WhatsApping 086 60 25,000. That song has kind of gone viral because of there's a line in a verse. I can't remember the words now off the top of my head, but there's a dance going around on TikTok in relation to that verse. So maybe people have kind of looked over the rest of the song, but when you see it on paper like that, it does raise a few questions. What do you think of it? Let me know. Another listener says, sick and tired of the English government trying to silence the Irish people. They are always trying to install control on us by speaking out for freedom of our own country and others. You'll never win. We will not be broken. Kneecap won't be broken until free Gaza and Palestine. Another comment on Kneecap. They have a big following, as does Bob Villain. I'm not sure about chanting death on stage helps the Gaza situation. What are the world leaders doing? Nothing. That's what I was saying earlier, that they are raising awareness and they're keeping Gaza in the spotlight, but it's possibly about how they're going about it, the chanting and I don't know. I was going for a blood test. The bloods came back all clear. Cholesterol was elevated. The phone went off during the call as the signal was bad. I rang the GP to ask for the result again. The second time, the GP flagged cholesterol and vitamin D levels. I then asked about a prostate check. The GP said it wasn't done. If I hadn't asked about the results, I wouldn't have known that the prostate wasn't checked. People remember to double check that your bloods are actually being tested for, or what your bloods are actually being tested for. At my age, getting the prostate checked is very important. Be sure to ask questions at the GP if you are unsure of anything. And finally for now, morning Highland, I was just listening to the news there. New car registration again. I did propose an idea to scrap VRT and bring in private registrations like USA and UK. Instant money cow for government, a no-brainer. What do you think? We're going to take a short ad break and we'll be back with the Community Garda information slot in a few minutes.
It's time for Vision Ireland Bingo on Highland Radio.
It's Tuesday, the 1st of July. You're playing on the brown sheet for the daily prize of €1,200. The reference number is S12. It's game number 27. The numbers are 30, 82, 27, 38, 90, 58, 5, 40, 18, and finally 72. Phone your claim to 9104833 before midnight, leaving your name, contact number and the name of the shop where you purchased your book, and we'll call you back the next working day. Get all your Vision Ireland bingo information at highlandradio.com.
Summer toys at Tinny's Toys. Everything for an outdoor summer. Swings, slides, trampolines, goalposts, rebounders, sand table, wheelbarrows. Of course, we also have our massive range of kids, pedal and electric toys. Need something for those rainy days? Well, we've that covered too, with the likes of Brooder Toys, Lego, Marvel Toys, books and more. Call into our store on the Leck Road, Letterkenny, or shop online at tinnystoys.com. Tinny's Toys, much more than just farm toys. Dan Boy.
Experience HOME, Ireland's first aerial hip opera by Fidget Feet and Toby Omoteso. A thrilling mix of aerial dance, hip hop, spoken word and opera. Featuring critically acclaimed rapper Woolsey. 9 performers, 1 unforgettable night. HOME lands at Angrinnan Theatre on July 19th. Don't miss this powerful genre-defying show. Tickets available now at angrinnan.com or by calling the box office team on 074 9120 777.
The Community Garda information slot is brought to you by Sheridan Security Systems, monitoring homes and businesses in the northwest for intruder, fire, panic and medical signals. Call Sheridan Security on 91 26025.
It is the Garda information slot, and I'm joined in studio by Sergeant Charlene Anderson from the Buncrana Garda Station. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Michaela. How are you?
Good, thank you very much. So we're going to start with a burglary in Killybegs.
That's right. So Gardaí are seeking the assistance of the public this morning in connection with a burglary that occurred at the town pier Killybegs between Friday the 27th of June at 12 midday and Monday the 30th of June at 8 a.m. Now, the wheelhouse of a boat was entered and a pair of binoculars and a GE Tech laptop was stolen from within. So we appeal to anyone who may have observed any suspicious activity in the area to contact Gardaí in Ballyshannon on 07198585530.
And moving now to Culdaff.
That's right. So we're appealing for witnesses to a 2-vehicle collision that occurred on the R238 at Temple Moyle, Culdaff between 10:15pm and 10:45pm on Tuesday the 24th of June. Now, one car was travelling from Malin towards Culdaff and the other car was travelling in the opposite direction when the collision occurred. Both drivers sustained injuries, none of which are believed to be life-threatening. There were no passengers in either vehicle at the time. But we'd appeal to anyone who may have observed the collision or who may have travelled along the route, may have dashcam footage, to make that available to Gardaí in Buncrana on 9320540.
And unfortunately, another collision, this time in the Drumkeen area.
That's correct, Michaela. This occurred last night and Gardaí in Letterkenny are investigating this collision. It occurred on the N13 at Callan, Drumkeen on Monday the 30th of June, shortly before 10:30pm. Now, a car had been travelling from the convoy direction, and it approached the junction to enter the N13 when the collision occurred. Now, the second car involved had been travelling along the N13 from Letterkenny direction towards Drumkeen. One of the drivers involved in the collision left the scene on foot before emergency services had arrived. No serious injuries were reported to Gardaí at the scene. But we're appealing to anyone who may have witnessed the collision to contact Gardaí, or indeed they can contact the Garda confidential line. If anyone has any dashcam footage, we'd ask them to make it available to us as well from the hours of 10:20pm to 10:45 if possible.
And then we're moving now to criminal damage incidents starting in the Ramelton area.
Yes, and that's right, Garda. You're appealing for information in relation to an incident of criminal damage, and this occurred at Gamble Square in Vermelton between 10:30pm on Sunday the 29th of June and 9am on Monday the 30th of June. Now, a food van that was parked at the location was vandalised between those times, and once again, if anybody witnessed the incident or indeed have any information pertaining to the incident, we'd ask them to contact Garda in Milford on 91 53060.
And another criminal damage incident in the Donegal town area.
That's correct. So Garda are investigating an incident of criminal damage, and this occurred at a business premises at the Diamond in Donegal town between 9 p.m. on Saturday the 28th of June and 7 a.m. on Sunday the 29th of June. Now, a shop window was smashed between those times, and CCTV from the surrounding areas is being viewed by investigating Garda. So just appeal once again, if anybody witnessed the incident or if anyone has any information in relation to it, to contact Garda in Ballyshannon on 071 9858 8530.
And apologies, that was my fault. We'll go to Clarke now this time.
And again, Garda are appealing for the assistance of the public in relation to a criminal damage incident, and this occurred at Kiltyfergal, Clarke, in the early hours of Wednesday the 25th of June at approximately 12:45 a.m. Two vehicles were parked at an address in the area and they were damaged. Their tyres were slashed. The tyres were slashed on both vehicles. So we just appeal to anyone who may have witnessed the incident. Once again, anyone who may have dashcam footage between the hours of 12:30 a.m. and 1 a.m. just to make that footage available to us. Or indeed, if anyone has any information in relation to the incident, contact Garda again in Ballyshannon. Or they can contact the Garda confidential line on 1800 666 111.
And investigations are ongoing into a theft from the friary in Rossnyla.
That's right. So Garda again in Ballyshannon are investigating the recent theft from the Franciscan Friary in Rossnyla. Now, this incident occurred on Wednesday the 25th of June at approximately 12:55 p.m. Two males entered the friary, one aged in his 20s. He was wearing a black jacket, blue jeans and a black cap, and the other was in his teens. He was wearing blue jeans, a black jacket and a pink and orange t-shirt and a black cap. They proceeded to force open a petition box and a sum of cash was stolen from within. So we'd appeal to anyone who may have observed these two males. We believe they were travelling in a black Passat with a partial reg of 10 LK. If anyone observed this vehicle, perhaps in the area of the friary, if somebody was visiting the friary, it may have dashcam footage in their own vehicle, or indeed travelled along the route between 12:30 p.m. and 1:30 p.m. Once again, we'd ask them to make that footage available to Garda in Ballyshannon. And just further to this, Michaela, should anyone wish to obtain any advice pertaining to security measures and they'd like to contact Sergeant Fergus McGurry, the Divisional Crime Prevention Officer, he's based in Letterkenny, and he can be contacted on 9167 100 and he'll be happy to assist them in any way that he can.
It's very disappointing seeing a place of worship being targeted once again. We know that there was a string of incidents in recent time, so it's disappointing there, and it's important that they do avail of the resources that you have in place in relation to the safety measures.
Absolutely, and Sergeant McGrory is available. He can be contacted. He'll call out to the premises, he'll speak to them about security measures, and again, if anybody wants to avail of that, he can be contacted in Letterkenny, as I said, on 9167 100.
And moving now to the Garda area of Manor Cunningham.
That's right. So the Garda are investigating a recent report of the theft of cattle from Galdana area of Manor Cunningham between 6 p.m. on Monday the 16th of June and 9 a.m. on Tuesday the 17th of June. Now, the following animals are believed to have been stolen. There was a red and white shorthorn bullock, a black shorthorn heifer and a black Aberdeen Angus heifer and a black Hereford Cross heifer. So we appeal to anyone who may have observed, once again, any suspicious activity or any vehicles in the area between those dates and times to contact Garda in Letterkenny on 9167 100. Or indeed, if anyone comes across any similar cattle for sale, we'd ask them to make contact with Garda as well.
And a reminder then about the Donegal Garda Youth Awards.
That's right. So the closing date to submit a nomination for the Donegal Garda Youth Awards is drawn to a close. The annual event celebrates outstanding young people between the ages of 13 and 21 from throughout the county. The nomination process is open, and An Garda Síochána in Donegal are now inviting the public to nominate a young person that they know who's committed to making a difference in their community. So nominations must be received by 12 noon tomorrow, that's Wednesday the 2nd of July, if they're to be considered. You can request a nomination form from any Garda station. You can download it from garda.ie, and full details are available on the Garda Síochána Donegal Facebook page.
And it's a lovely initiative, and if you were thinking about it, now's the time to do it before it closes tomorrow.
That's it.
Sergeant Charlene Anderson, thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Thank you, Michaela.
The Community Garda information slot is brought to you by Sheridan Security Systems, monitoring homes and businesses in the northwest for intruder, fire, panic and medical signals. Call Sheridan Security on 91 26025.
That was Sergeant Charlene Anderson there, and we'll have more of the information from the Garda information slot available later on our website, highlandradio.com. Now back to some of your comments. I saw Deirdre Garry's comments that there should be a confidentiality clause for women in maternity hospitals after a follower started DMing her that they'd expose her pregnancy. This got me thinking, should there be a confidentiality clause for any part of the hospital? People should be entitled to their privacy while accessing healthcare. I do understand that it is a confidentiality, that there are confidentiality clauses, but obviously, as is the case in many situations, people decide that they're going to break that. And yeah, I think that's horrible, DMing someone threatening to expose their pregnancy. Another listener says the parking situation in Letterkenny Hospital is horrific. I am pregnant and a high risk pregnancy, so I have to attend appointments weekly in the hospital and I dread this. You can barely get parked. Every appointment I'm at least an hour and 15 minutes early so I can drive round and round every car park praying I get a space. Last week I had to rush in for an appointment that was last minute due to a bleed. There was no spaces, so I parked next to a bay but half on the grass verge. I was not in anyone's way and I paid the extortionate €4 fee and ran in the hospital crying and praying my baby was still with us. Luckily, baby is okay, but when I got back to the car, I had a Euro Car Parks €70 ticket on my windscreen, claiming I had parked on the grass. I was half on, half off. I called and explained my situation to the company and told I have to pay regardless. A neighbour also recently had to do similar, but for their ill child, but in the car park, and again the same, was told they have to pay with no discretion or empathy. I'm actually scared of when the time comes to give birth, as how will I even get parked? The hospital does not have any allocated parking for pregnant women or children's bays, or the lack in disability parking is terrible for this day and age. Parking in general is impossible at the hospital. The fees are diabolical from this third party company. We'll be back again just after this short break.
Highland Bakery brings the magic to your morning tea break. Golden scones, still warm, soft in the middle and impossible to resist. Look for the packet with the rabbit on it. Fresh from the oven to your local shop. 25 years of Highland Bakery.
With MasterCard Priceless Experiences, the possibilities are endless. You could be front row, screaming every lyric, discovering new destinations, or a land of mouth-watering flavours. Register at priceless.com to unlock a world of priceless experiences. One place, endless possibilities. Priceless.
The countdown is on for Carrigart Fest, July 11th to 13th in the Marquee at the Carrigart Hotel, featuring One for the Road, Bingo Loco Goes Country and the Whistling Donkeys. Tickets on Eventbrite or from hotel reception. Why not stay over? Great accommodation and brand new restaurant await. Book now at carrigarthotel.com.
Why leave the magic moments and great scenes you've captured sitting on your phone when you can have them printed at McGee's Chemist? Using McGee's website or one of their in-store kiosks, you just upload your photos, select the ones you want, and have them printed instantly within an hour, or use the 24-hour service. 35mm and film from disposable cameras also printed, and old photos can be digitally restored. Hold your memories in your hand with McGee's Chemist, Letterkenny.
Welcome back to the 9 till noon show. Now, you may remember the case of Valerie French Kilroy. In 2019, she was murdered by her husband at their home near Westport while her 3 young sons lay in bed. Her husband, James Kilroy, was last year convicted for the murder of Valerie. I am joined now by Valerie's brother, David French. Good morning to you, David.
Good morning.
So, David, you have written a book, it's just been published in recent weeks, about your sister Valerie's death and the aftermath. It's titled For Valerie. Can you take us back to that day where, unfortunately, Valerie was murdered?
So, basically, well, from Valerie's perspective, she had a very, very busy day. James Kilroy was taking a day off sick. He failed to collect one of the children from school. He didn't want to take the other two to an open day at a play school. She was rushing out of work to do all of that. She came home at the end of the day. There's no food in the house. She makes pizza. She goes out to some shopping for groceries. She gets a call from a friend. She shows up, has a cup of tea, comes home at 11, and then James Kilroy attacked and killed her. That was Valerie's perspective on her last day.
And what was it like getting that phone call for yourself?
It was absolutely shocking. I mean, the thing to remember is you kind of get the information in dribs and drabs. We heard Valerie's gone, but you're wondering, like, how are they gone? Was it a car crash? That's the first port of call. Then you ask, well, where's James? And they don't say, and then they say they have a man in custody. So you're kind of putting the things together over the first day, then over the first week, and literally there were things we didn't know until 5 years later at the last trial, and there's still an awful lot we don't know. So you get the information fed to you over a long period of time.
And in terms of Valerie and James's relationship, were there any warning signs that there was domestic abuse there was domestic violence before this?
You have to separate. Yes, there was, but we saw it in retrospect. But I'd like to make the distinction between domestic and abuse and domestic violence. There's no indication of violence until he stabbed and strangled and beat her. There was violence then, but there's no evidence now of violence before that. And that was a very important point in the trial, and also in a lot of recent research, where women who are at risk of homicide, they're not necessarily getting kind of progressively beaten up in advance, so they don't necessarily know what's happening. But all the other signs were there. James Kilroy was very controlling, wanted to know where she was very useless at doing anything to kind of help the family along. This was a family with 3 young children, and he didn't seem to pull his weight, as it were. That sort of attitude of putting down her friends and isolating her, all of that stuff was there, and just kind of afterwards we saw it.
And that unimaginable loss of a sibling, but when you consider that it's someone that Valerie trusted with her life, trusted with her children's lives, that is very hard to comprehend.
Absolutely. I mean, if someone just kind of got murdered walking down the street by a random stranger, you wouldn't be dealing with the what ifs and should we have seen it, and we knew this guy. Obviously, he'd been in our houses and we'd welcomed him in as Valerie's partner and then husband. So you're dealing with that whole level of betrayal, which isn't there if it's something like a random street attack or whatever. And it's important to remember, the vast majority of women who are killed, they know the person who kills them.
Yeah. And the title of your book, For Valerie, did you feel compelled to tell her story?
Yes. There's a lot of statistics, 270 something women since Women's Aid started counting in 1996, killed because of in this kind of situation. And it just, didn't want her to become one more number. There's a whole story there, and all the other victims' families that I've met, they've all got very, very similar stories. But I think it's easier for people to understand the dynamics and see the impact when you say, look, this is what happened to us. This is the nonsense we went through. And you look at, say Chris Cawley or Olivia Dunlea murdered. Her mother, Anne Dunlea, is still very active on this area. You see the trajectory they go through and the way the system treats them. And the Valerie story is fairly typical along those lines.
And obviously then you had to deal with the other issue that you've been speaking out about as well. It's in terms of Valerie's children, they're still under the legal guardianship of James Kilroy, and this is no doubt very difficult for yourselves as a family.
Absolutely. It's and also it's very difficult for the children. There's someone who has killed their mother and has access to all the data about them. He's involved in major decisions. He can control if they go abroad and stuff like that. This is ongoing abuse, and having a murder verdict against you, as he does, has zero effect on guardianship. And this is this is absolute madness. There's 7 children put in this situation every year. Like a lot of women who are killed by partners or ex-partners, those women have children. And again, like killing a mother is child abuse. It's kind of black and white, and there should be some sanction. I mean, the sanction of spending your time in Castlereagh is one thing, but it has no effect on your childcare rights or your property rights, and there should be.
So what has that process been like for yourselves from whenever James Gilroy was arrested? Obviously now he's been convicted of Valerie's murder. What has that process been in terms of trying to get guardianship of the children?
So, basically the children, in my personal view, were wrongfully taken into care. We cannot get guardianship. If you want to try and get guardianship of a child, you should have been minding them for 6 months in advance. And obviously we were not doing that because Valerie was alive. So this isn't really about us trying to get guardianship. It's about taking guardianship away from James Gilroy and making the children safer as a result.
And you have been campaigning then for Valerie's Law, which would overturn the system in its current form.
Yes, and it shouldn't be a big deal. It's an amendment to a piece of legislation saying, look, if someone has done this and there's a manslaughter or murder verdict against them, their guardianship should be suspended or removed. I'm actually on Kildare Street at the minute. I'm going to be going and seeing the Justice Committee this afternoon and addressing them on the government's bill, just my input into the government's bill, draft bill on this. And the Social Democrats also have a bill on this area, which was introduced by Gary Gannon as a private member's bill. So there's a lot of kind of regular campaigning on this. And these things take time, goes through stages, but at the moment there's a lot of support and people understand, look, this is something that absolutely makes no sense, because in a normal situation, a lone parent like James Gilroy would be helped and supported by the state to reunify with his children and so on. I mean, if he was inside in prison for robbing a car, then obviously, his relationship with the children should be helped and supported by the state. Unfortunately, the state just charges on and gives that service to him.
Yeah, very different circumstances, yeah.
Yes. So people like him should be carved out from that.
And what's the feedback been like that you have been getting from government representatives on this?
It's been absolutely excellent. I've been very, very pleased with it. Very, very cross-party. There's a lot of support from a lot of areas. I think it's not really the kind of political back and forth. It's the inertia. People say, oh, it's not that many cases, or you're kind of going up against a default system that kind of reveres a family as a unit. And you sort of go, look, one parent's after killing the other, that family has been dissolved. It has been categorically finished, and the system doesn't really recognize that. So I think the fight isn't against one party versus another or one ideology versus another. It's literally against inertia and the time it takes to make what should be a straightforward amendment on legislation. But that said, Minister Jim O'Callaghan has been very, very supportive on this. I met him last week at the Women's Aid conference at the launch of their Impact Report for 2024, and many, many opposition party members also have been very, very supportive. So that's very welcomed.
And unfortunately, the stark reality is that, more families need Valerie's Law in place, because unfortunately there's so much violence against women. We only have to look at recent days when Sarah Montgomery, a pregnant mother of 2, was murdered in Northern Ireland. There just seems to be no end to this violence against women despite so much awareness. So it's so important that regulations to support families are in place.
Absolutely. Like the names, you hear these names that come up in the news and then they go away, and you sort of slightly forget about them. But the year that Valerie was killed, the first woman that was killed by a ex-partner in that year was in your coverage area, Jasmine McMonigal, and that was, I think, January 2019. And the ex-partner was convicted of killing her. And there's many other cases that if you say the name, people go, oh yeah, Clodagh Haw, or Jacqueline Connolly's sister, Clodagh. There's a lot of names, And then if you write them all down, you kind of go, well, this is this is actually a lot of people. If if someone was coming in and killing these people, and it was recognised as an independent thing, you'd be sending out the army to stop them. And we don't seem to have a joined up response at a as a state level, and the normal default family support mechanisms kick in and support people like James Kilroy, regardless of what they've done.
Yeah. And another unfortunate thing that you're going through is in relation to Valerie's estate, and James Gilroy is refusing to cooperate on this.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, I had to go. He's disqualified as being her executor. He would be the normal legal person's representative because he was married to her. He's disqualified because of the verdict, but he still had to consent to handing over the legal personal representative or executorship to the next person in line. That happens to be me, because Valerie's parents, our parents, are dead. And the children obviously can't be the executors. So because he wouldn't consent, I had to go to the High Court. And that cost, I had 2 goes at the High Court, that cost €12,500. That comes out of Valerie's estate, which means it comes out of the pockets of the little boys, it comes out of their college fund. And that's because James Kilroy wouldn't simply consent to something that he wasn't going to keep anyway. He was trying to impose conditions and do this and do that. And it was like, he doesn't seem to accept the murder verdict. I mean, he is appealing it, as is his right. But look, we got to sort out Valerie's estate regardless. And the amount of friction and vector for abuse and messing that someone can do even after a murder verdict is incredible. Even just,
it's nearly like that control element you talked about between James and Valerie previously. It's as if that's kind of carrying on now.
Exactly. I mean, the person doesn't change. You know them a bit better because you can see what they've done and they've been convicted for it. And a stunning amount of information about James Kilroy came out during the trial. You know, his drug use, the fact that he covered up drug use 20 years ago where he was committed for a few days, the pornography, the alcohol abuse, and there's a lot of minimization comes from his side. But, all this stuff is out in public, and he chose to put it out in public by having 3 murder trials. So, you kind of see, look, this is the kind of person he is. And, he hasn't changed. He's the same abusive, controlling person as he was back then.
And how difficult is that? You've lost your sister and then you kind of see all this coming out about James Gilroy. Is it nearly as if this was a separate life that your sister, was subjected to?
Yeah, she was kind of holding the family together, and we didn't see this. We could see that she was hyper busy, and we could see that he wasn't really pulling his weight. We had no clue at all of the full extent of what was going on. And that's frightening that things can be so different inside the family home and outside. I'm sure there's thousands of homes where it's like that, but clearly shouldn't be like that.
Yeah, no, definitely not. I like the way in the book you've dedicated it to the silenced women, and there's also a photo of Valerie's tombstone, and it says murdered by her husband, and it's just a reminder that, the life that she had was brutally taken away from her, and, I suppose you just don't want people to forget that.
Yeah, we put a lot of thought into that wording and thought, look, we'll write it as it is. We've got the murder verdict. We didn't put up the gravestone until after the verdict, so it's clear it's murdered, it's not killed. And that's not unusual. There's other people who have written the same stuff. Sometimes it's written in Irish. I could give examples, but there's other people who have, said whose life was taken. And it's, you've got to call it what it is. There's no point saying, resting in peace or whatever. It's like, look, this is the truth. It's unfortunate. It doesn't, we know it. And just, put it on our gravestone, recognise the fact.
Yeah. We'll be watching closely to see the progress of Valerie's law, and it's a nice way to mark her as well if this is implemented. Thank you so much, David, for joining me this morning, and wishing you well there.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
So that is David French, the brother of Valerie French Kilroy, who was murdered by her husband in 2019, and his book for Valerie is now on sale. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Donegal. Thinking of cutting your energy bills or upgrading your home? DLDC and Mount Lucas are bringing the Retrofit Roadshow to you. Join us in Dunloe July 14th to 18th and Letterkenny July 21st to 25th. Free sessions for homeowners. Learn how to boost your BER, upgrade your insulation and access SEAI grants. One-day certified training for tradespeople. Future-proof your skills in NZEB retrofitting. Places are limited. Book now at dldc.org or call 074 9127 056. DLDC, bringing energy expertise to your doorstep.
Last month I joined my walking group's WhatsApp chat and accidentally sent them a picture of Herbert, my hamster, twice. But now, thanks to high digital drop-in Fridays at my local Vodafone store, I'm video calling, sharing recipes and even ordering prescriptions online. And now when I send pictures of Herbert, it's always on purpose. Visit highdigital.ie or drop into your nearest participating Vodafone store Fridays between 10 and 1 for free practical advice on using your phone. Vodafone. Together we can.
Bring your family on a day out to Dublin on Saturday 5th of July for the Rally for Life. Sponsored buses by Donegal Pro-Life. To book your seats, ring Margaret on 089 246 9599. That's 089 246 9599.
Highland Radio weather updates with McElhenny's. Find all your summer essentials from fashion and accessories to beauty and homeware at McElhenny's. Explore more in-store or shop online at mcelhennys.com today.
Largely dry today with isolated showers and sunny spells. Sunshine will become more widespread this afternoon with highest temperatures of 15 to 16 degrees. Now, you will have heard on the Garda information slot that they are investigating a collision that occurred between two vehicles on the N13 at Callendrum on Monday the 30th of June, which was last night, shortly before 10:30. I'm joined now by Adrian. Good morning, Adrian.
Hello, how are you, Michaela?
Good, thank you very much. So, you had heard this crash happening, and unfortunately, it's a bit of a black spot.
It's an ongoing issue. So there's multiple crashes there every year. People have lost their lives at that junction, just at the M13 filling station there. And I think much more could be done. Like to start with, the road marking's very poor. Drivers don't adhere to the double solid line. They see it as a passing opportunity when they see the straight, and when you've cars coming out of the other way of the junction from the convoy or the Minticat side, it's just a head-on collision straight away.
And this is such a busy route that, I suppose for you living along the road, that you do want to see work done. There's people travelling there, daily, but there's people that are unfamiliar with the area as well, and that's another issue.
Oh, definitely. And another thing, like there's no street lighting at the junction, so the visibility is pretty poor.
And
it is a very busy junction.
Yeah. And have you raised this with local councillors?
We have been in contact with the council before about visibility and putting up lights, but kind of fell on deaf ears, to be honest.
And do you think there is a speeding issue, or it is the lack of visibility there?
I think there's a couple of factors, and there's a couple of deterrents that could be put in place to limit the risk. So I believe islands could be introduced, or even bollards to stop cars from overtaking where they shouldn't be at this junction. Street lighting would definitely add to the safety. And along with that, there's a possibility at that junction to have turn-off lanes. So when you be coming from Letterkenny, you could go into a turn-off lane to head for Convoy. Or if you're coming from Ballybofey, you could go into a turn-off lane to go to Minticat. I think it would just add to the safety. And I don't think any more lives need to be lost. I think something could be done about this.
And I'm unfamiliar about that particular stretch, but is it a wide enough stretch that there could be additional lanes put in place?
Not at the moment, but there's fields either side that could be incorporated, and I don't know, that'd be up to the council to approach landowners. But
and
there's a severe risk for life at that junction. That's just what I feel. I come out from Ballybofey and try to turn right at this junction, and I put on my indicator, and people are passing you when you have on your indicator. It's very dangerous, that junction.
Yeah. Well, Adrian, thanks so much for joining us to raise awareness there, and hopefully there will be people listening that can make a difference in relation to road safety there. I know there's so many places right across the county that works do need to be carried out, so you can check that out. I mentioned it was on the Garda information slot, so it'll be on our website. More information as it relates to that collision last night at Callan in Drumkeen. Turning now to a few of your comments. Our father was scammed out of €60,000 with gift cards, mainly via WhatsApp and Facebook. He's in his early 80s. The scammers are saying that they have relatives who need operations, etc. His wife does not know that all their savings are gone. That is very sad. This has been going on for a year or more and we never knew. I just want to urge people to be vigilant of elderly people online. We're waiting to see if his phone has been mirrored and if they can take the money without his consent. My dad knows that he's been scammed but thinks that he is doing good. Gift cards seem to be what is coming up on the bank statements. That's how the bank never copped on. It was €50, €100, €300 here and there. We've taken bank cards and phone, etc. off him. And that's the sad reality, that it is the elderly people and the more vulnerable people, you know, that are willing to do good to help somebody out, that these people are targeting. They're targeting so many people, but they seem to just hone in on the elderly, and €60,000 gone for that per man and all his life savings. And to be carrying that, and, you know, his wife not knowing that all their savings are gone, everything they've worked for, I'm sure, all their lives. Another listener says, I live in the Dunfanaghy area and recently took maternity leave, but I've only just discovered there's no creche facilities in the town. There are in Termon and Creaslot, which is up the road. The government want us to return to work, but they are not providing the supports. Yeah, that's a serious issue, and not even, you know, that there's no creche facilities in place, but the price of childcare, people simply can't afford. And if they were in full-time employment before they were off on maternity leave, just, you know, to go back 5 days a week just simply is unjustifiable for many. And especially then if you have more than one child, you know, that's double the price. For some, it's like paying a second mortgage. I have flying squirrels in my home in Letterkenny. How do I get rid of them? I've heard that peppermint oil gets rid of them. Has anyone else encountered them? They're setting off my alarm. If you can help that listener out, get in touch by ringing us on 9125,000 or texting or WhatsApping 086 60 25,000. Regarding the state pension, this listener says, I have 960 stamps paid via my work all these years. I need 972 for the state pension, so I'm 12 short. Presently, I'm only getting paid 85% of the pension. Has this happened to anyone else, and what did they do about it? It all seems very unfair. The new 4-lane road is a disgrace with weeds. The Ballyreen Road is full of residents. People need to take responsibility for their own areas. We want to have our own areas looking nice. The council can't be everywhere. People need to look after their own areas. That is true in some instances, but I'm sure there are other people that would argue that, you know, they're paying for the council services, that the council should be looking after the maintenance. Good evening. I wanted to pose a question about the homelessness in Letterkenny. This is an email we received. Do we actually feel like it's getting any better personally? I've been homeless for near 2 years and try as I might to find affordable accommodation. I can't, and I have 2 small children, and my answer from our council is always the same. There's people with higher priority than me, which I do accept, but no matter how hard I try, I get nowhere. But the promise of houses are being built, but they are so far away, etc. Then when houses that do become available, again, I am told, no, I'll be considered along with the council policies, but still it's always a no. I've been in homeless accommodation for nearly 2 years and personally see others abusing the system with my own 2 eyes, claiming homeless to try to get housed, but in reality they're staying with someone 6 nights out of the week, happily just playing along while others are fighting tooth and nail to try better the situation. Just a thought, that listener says. Hi, could you ask someone in Donegal County Council why they are not cutting grass? The Manor Cunningham roundabout is a disgrace, as well as the roundabout at Bunagee and the tourist office in Letterkenny. by roads coming onto main roads have not been cut, long grass blocking the vision as well as road signs. Could you ask the council why this is allowed to happen this year, as it has been looked after up until now? I wonder if you could highlight the problem with overgrowth. Seems to be a theme here today, especially in the rural areas. The trees and bushes are growing mad to the point you can't see the speed limit signs along the road or the signs of the townland you're entering. What's to happen? Are the council supposed to take care of this? Not to mention, if we get another dry spell of weather where gorse fires are a threat, many a house will be in danger. Apart from that, our lovely views of the countryside are disappearing fast, that listener says. Hi, just got my new home insurance renewal. It was €265 last year. It's now €400. How is that just too high for anyone on a pension? Many thanks. Yeah, nearly Dublin. That is crazy. Greg was speaking yesterday to Senator Niall Blaney and Councillor Liam Blaney. There's a civic reception being held for 100 years in politics for the Blaney family on Friday. A couple of comments in relation to that. Please wish Senator and Councillor Blaney our best wishes on their 100 years in politics. We have a long friendship and would like to congratulate the Blaneys. We knew the late Neil and Harry as well. That comes in from Dawn and Anna Hart in the Diamond Rifo. From one end of the county to another is the message there. We'll be back with more just after this short break.
It's midsummer markdowns time at McElhinney's department store in Ballybuffet. Enjoy up to 25% off your favourite designer brands across fashion, accessories, home and much more. Discover top offers and unmissable deals in store from Monday to Saturday or shop online at mcelhenneys.com today.
At Fleming's, we take great pride in having provided quality steel and roofing to all our customers throughout Ireland since 1860.
Tell them about the doors, John.
OK, Mike. We also provide a full quality range of
doors, industrial doors, garage doors, roller doors, insulated doors.
Thanks for that, Mike.
No dramas, mate.
Fleming's, engineering solutions for 150 years. Call us now on 074 91 48 234.
Thinking of a new kitchen, dreaming of a bathroom upgrade, or finally tackling that garden project? At B&S Credit Union, we are introducing our lowest ever home improvement loan rate to help turn your dreams to reality. B&S Credit Union is now lending up to €100,000. For full details of this great rate and flexible loan product, visit our website at bnscu.ie or freephone 1800 290 390, where our experienced loan team will be delighted to help you. Loans are subject to approval. Terms and conditions apply. B&S Credit Union Limited is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
It's 11 o'clock and time for the latest news headlines with Donna Marie Doherty.
Thanks, Michaela. Good morning. A sum of cash was stolen from the Franciscan Friary in Rosnowla on Wednesday of last week in broad daylight. At around 5 to 1, two males entered the friary. One was aged in his 20s, wearing a black jacket, blue jeans and a black cap, and the other was in his teens, wearing blue jeans, a black jacket, a pink and orange t-shirt and a black cap. They forced open the petition's donation box from which the money was taken. Garda are asking anyone who may have observed the pair in question or a black Volkswagen Passat with a partial registration of 10 LK in the area of the friary on that date to get in touch. One of the drivers involved in a two-vehicle collision in Drumkeen last night left the scene on foot. Gardaí are now investigating. No serious injuries were reported at the scene after the crash that happened just before 10:30. Garda Sergeant Shirlene Anderson made an appeal for information on this morning's 9 till noon show. An investigation has been launched after a pair of binoculars and a GE Tech laptop were stolen from the wheelhouse of a boat at the Town Pier in Kellybegs. It happened sometime between 12 p.m. on Friday and 8 o'clock yesterday morning. Gardaí are asking those who observed suspicious activity in the area between those dates to make contact with Gardaí in Ballyshannon. Donegal has been named the worst performing local authority in terms of social housing delivery. A Letterkenny councillor says it's the result of a perfect storm. The council delivered only 248 of its target of 534 from the year 2022 until 2024. 178 were built by Donegal County Council, with the rest coming from approved housing bodies and the Part 5 contribution of developers. The 42-year-old woman who was arrested in connection with the murder of a pregnant mother of two in County Down has been released unconditionally. 27-year-old Sarah Montgomery died at a house in Donaghadee on Saturday. A 28-year-old man was arrested on Sunday on suspicion of murder, and the woman who was released yesterday was arrested on suspicion of assisting an offender. PSNI say both suspects were known to the victim. And finally, Nikita Hand is to face cross-examination from Conor McGregor's lawyers today. It's part of the MMA fighter's appeal against a High Court civil jury finding in favour of Mrs Hand, who alleged he raped her in a Dublin hotel in 2018. She was awarded €250,000 in damages following a trial last November. That's all for now from the news desk. Back with more at 12 noon.
Hey there, looking for car insurance that's simple, fast and comes with a little extra? That's RedClick. You can save an average of €245 when you quote online. Insurance that's easy, insurance that's quick. Whenever you need us, you just need to click. Visit redclick.ie. Discount based on new private car policies from 1st November 24 to 1st February 25. Max discount €300. Apply before optional covers. Subject to minimum premium. Acceptance criteria, terms and conditions apply. Generali Seguros y Reyes Seguros SAU trading as RedClick and Generali is authorised by the General Dictators of Insurance and Pension Funds in Spain and is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland for conduct of business rules.
The county's #1 talk show, the 9 till noon show on Highland Radio.
Welcome back to the 9 till noon show. It's Michaela Clarke in this morning for Greg Hughes. We're into the final hour of this show. We're talking now about the Irish Heart Foundation calling for a smoking ban on a number of public spaces. To discuss this, I am joined by Mark Murphy, who is Senior Policy Manager at the Irish Heart Foundation. Good morning to you, Mark.
Good morning.
So, Mark, where have these calls come from? This is obviously something that does affect quite a high volume of people.
Yes, absolutely. So the reason why we're talking about this today is France just this weekend brought in a new law that would ban smoking in public places where the public and particularly where children can gather. And that includes bus stops, beaches, stadiums, anywhere near schools, anywhere around libraries. And they brought it in just at the start of the summer holidays. So just that to protect kids on beaches and in parks where they'll be spending most of their summer from people smoking and secondhand smoking. And also just to reduce that normalization effect of smoking that children see. And we think that if France has taken the lead on that, Ireland could follow suit and bring in a similar ban on public places here, which there is strong public support for that here in Ireland.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say, that I'm sure there will be an appetite for that, particularly non-smokers. You know yourself, you're out somewhere and just that smell of smoke, you know, it just puts you off certain places, never mind, you know, it impacting you.
Absolutely. We know the HSE have done research on this, and 64%, so nearly two-thirds of the public, are in favour of extending a smoking ban to these kind of public places. But like that, we all know the dangers of secondhand smoking. So if you're at a beach or at a park and someone is smoking up beside you, we don't want that. The smell is toxic. It's bad for your health, but also it causes a huge environmental damage as well. If you look across every local authority across the country, year on year, they do a litter survey. This includes Donegal or Dublin or any other local authority. The number one littered item in the country is still cigarette butts. So if we can reduce and ban smoking in these public places, it would actually have a huge environmental, but also a public health benefit. And also you think about if you're a smoker yourself and you're looking to quit smoking, but if you're going to all these public places and you're seeing other people smoke, that's that kind of temptation to trigger you back in. So having these smoke-free spaces would actually support smokers or looking to quit to actually successfully quit as well.
And do you think that they could phase it out by designating certain areas, say at a beach, that, you know, if you're a smoker, you can go here to smoke, you know, the way in, say, an airport, they can go to a designated area?
I think the danger, and of course, you know, this isn't a very addictive substances, so it's not as easy for me to say just people should quit. It is a huge addictive substance, so I think that it is a valid concern. The issue is that if you have one rule or one place where smokers can't smoke and one place where smokers can't smoke, it does cause a lot of confusion. And at times, even it might be like the authorities or the public aren't sure which is which. So I think it's quite better. And the WHO, this is what they recommend, is to have one rule, and that's no smoking here, and keep it that straight. So that way it keeps that adherence and a proper enforcement.
And in terms of the enforcement, How would this process work? Have you thought that far ahead?
I think it is, again, that is a valid concern, and these kind of similar concerns were raised in 2003 and 2004 in the lead up to the workplace smoking ban, the historic workplace smoking ban. There was a lot of concern about, well, what happens if just everyone in the pub continues to smoke and every single pub has people smoking in them? The Gardaí aren't going to go around to each pub to throw them out. But the reason why that was so successful is because there was a huge level of public buy-in. The public just wanted it. The public saw the benefit of it and they supported it. So I do think if we brought something similar like this, there'd be a huge level of public support and public buy-in, and that would bring in itself kind of a public enforcement, kind of a social enforcement level to it as well. But also there will be, the odd characters who would breach it. So we do need some enforcement and sanctions to keep that enforcement up. In France, there is a fine for those who breach these bans, and that's going to be at €135. So I do think there should be a level of a similar level here. So whereby you have a bit of a carrot and stick approach, of the carrot of the public buy-in, but also the stick of a proper fee and enforcement, and proper resources going towards environmental health officers and the HSE so they actually can police and enforce these rules.
And that €135, that's quite a hefty fine. So you would imagine that would be a good enough deterrent.
Absolutely. It would be a huge deterrent to actually, why would a smoker even risk smoking at a bus stop if they know they could potentially be fined €135? And like that, it would just kind of invalidate the enforcement even more, knowing that it's a huge deterrent, so people wouldn't do it. So there's a number of ways that we can really enforce and deter smokers from doing it, and I think that's one of the key ways to do it.
And how do you see the government getting on board? Do you think that they would be open to this idea?
I think so. Last year, at the start of 2024, the government actually ran a public consultation on looking at further regulation of tobacco and e-cigarettes. And one of the questions was this question itself, should the government look to extend smoke-free spaces to other areas, and even extend the smoke-free spaces to cover both tobacco and e-cigarettes, which we would be in favour of as well. But, just last week in Dublin, Dublin hosted the World Conference on Tobacco Control, this big global conference where it had academics, researchers, NGOs from around the world all come together to see how we can better enforce tobacco control. And Taoiseach Micheál Martin, actually gave the opening address there. And he said taking action on tobacco control is a no-brainer. And I think that's so true. This is a no-brainer, and tobacco control is a no-brainer. So we're very lucky that we have a Taoiseach like Micheál Martin, who was the Minister of Health when the workplace smoking ban was brought in, to be such a strong supporter of tobacco action and e-cigarette action. And the same goes to say for the Minister for Health, Jennifer Carr-McNeill, again, a very strong supporter of tobacco and e-cigarette control. And I think what's really driving it is that the public, the Irish public out there have a strong appetite for tobacco and e-cigarette control. They know that tobacco has no place in our society. They know that the dangers and the harm that cigarette smoke has on people's health. And even now on e-cigarettes, they know that they are purely targeting young people. So I think the Irish public and the Irish politicians are way ahead, and they want to see action on this. So I think there will be a lot of great level of support for this.
And how do you see, you talked about there that the public is aware of the dangers around smoking and vaping, and so many people have taken proactive approaches in terms of this, but how further do you think that banning smoking in certain outdoor areas would benefit people's health?
Well, first of all, I think it would denormalise the act of smoking. So we're seeing about the next generation of children and young people who look up to adults, look up to their peers, and if they don't see their peers or adults smoking, then they won't smoke. So it has a really good denormalisation effect. But also, secondhand smoke, even in outdoor settings, does have a health impact, particularly if you're a children or young person, because your body and your lungs are still developing. You're at much higher level of risk from smoking and secondhand smoking. But I think we have to look at, a number of measures. It's not just a measure like this. It has to be kind of a suite of measures, extending smoke-free spaces. But also we have to look to what's happening in the UK. The UK are very close to passing world-defining legislation that would phase out the sale of cigarettes to anyone born after 2009, and that's going to be applied to Northern Ireland. And so we're going to get to a time on the island of Ireland where in the Republic we have one rule for tobacco, and then Northern Ireland we have another rule for tobacco. So I think we have to have a debate in Ireland about whether we should be following the UK in phasing out cigarettes for a certain age group, and I think we should. And again, the HSE have done research on this, and 83% of the public want to see a phase out of cigarette smoking. So I think it's not just one measure. There is no such thing as a silver bullet measure in tobacco control. So I think we have to look at a number of measures, all brought in together, all brought in with proper investment, proper resources, and proper timeline to actually get that public buy-in. But I think the public are ready for this, and the public want to see the end of tobacco.
And it is important, that all-island approach, particularly, say, for us here in Donegal, you know, we're, and depending on what part of the county you're in, you're a matter of minutes from crossing over the border then as well.
Absolutely. Like, you guys know more than anyone else on the island of Ireland just how close you are to Northern Ireland, and the kind of the two rules, if they're not aligned, how it can kind of cause confusion and kind of cross-border trade and cross-border shopping. So I do think it's really important that we have alignment on these areas for a whole matter of reasons. But I do think there's a huge reason why Ireland should follow the UK. And again, this happens in a lot of ways. It takes for one country to take the lead, and then other countries follow. So the UK will be taking the lead here. Ireland could follow. And once Ireland would follow, we'd be the first country in the EU to do so. And like that, we would set a precedent for other countries to follow, like the Netherlands, like Denmark, like Sweden, who are also talking about kind of a tobacco endgame. So there's a number of reasons why we should have an all-island alignment. And again, we have the public behind us.
One listener says the smoking ban in Ireland prohibits smoking in all enclosed workplaces, public buildings, restaurants, bars, clubs, offices, company cars, taxis and public transport. Is that not enough? What about my rights? But I suppose then it's what about the rights of the non-smokers then? You know, we don't want to be subjected to that second-hand smoke.
Absolutely. And again, we do have to think about people who smoke. You know, it is a very addictive substance, but I would probably go back to what the French minister said, who brought this piece of legislation in France. And she said tobacco must disappear from places where there are children. So I think the right of a children to breathe clean air and not to be exposed to secondhand smoke trumps any other right. The life and the health of a children trumps everything. So I think that's what we have to think about when we're talking about tobacco control measures like this.
Absolutely. Mark Murphy, Senior Policy Manager at the Irish Heart Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Looking to some of your other comments that have been coming in on this topic. Do they expect us to just smoke at home? Smoking is also a very sociable thing. You meet fellow smokers on your break while having a chat. Some of my best nights out have been in smoking areas. Legislation should primarily focus on preventing genuine and significant harm. Given the rapid dispersion of smoke outdoors, the harm in open public spaces is often more about nuisance or preference than a direct health threat. Overregulating minor nuisances, I'm not sure which one that is, can breed disrespect for law. Smoking is a legal activity. In a free society, individuals should have the autonomy to make personal choices, including the choice to smoke, provided it doesn't directly and significantly harm others. Another listener says, I'd like to see it made illegal to smoke in your car with your kids. Yeah, I did think there was something around that, but maybe I'm wrong in relation to smoking with children in your car. I could have made that up, but yeah, I do think obviously the child has no choice but to inhale this second-hand smoke as well. Yeah, it's an interesting one. What do you think? 086 60 25,000, and we'll be back just after this short break.
Would you like to experience the magic of Riverdance 30, the new generation? Come along with Highland Radio on Thursday, August the 28th for an unforgettable trip to Dublin's Gaiety Theatre. Enjoy luxury coach travel, a night stay at the 4-star Grand Canal Hotel, and premium seats to the iconic show. Spaces are limited, so secure your spot today. Call us now on 074 91 25,000 or visit the outlet at highlandradio.com.
Get ahead of back to school this year at Dunnes Stores. From prepping for their very first day to refreshing their uniform, now's the perfect time to shop schoolwear for the adventures ahead. Pick up a 3-pack of playproof polos from just €5 and knitted school jumpers from just €3.75. Stock up on essentials like Easy Care joggers from just €5 and sweatshirts from €3.75. Back to school at Dunnes Stores for little ones with big schedules. Shop in-store and online now. Terms and conditions apply.
This summer, fuel up for your holiday adventures with Certa and Adon the Little Dragon. Every time you fill up at a Certa forecourt or depot, you could win great weekly prizes, from fuel vouchers to your very own Adon Teddy. And you may also be in with a chance to win a luxury family break at Fota Island Resort worth €2,000. So don't miss out. Fuel up for your summer adventures at Certa. For details and T's and C's, visit certaireland.ie/summer.
A huge 3-day €1 million stock clearance marquee sale begins this Thursday the 3rd at McGinley's Furniture, Letterkenny. Sofas, beds, mattresses, dining sets, occasional furniture and more, all heavily discounted in store and even further reduced in the clearance marquee where there's up to 70% off. It's for 3 days only, Thursday, Friday and Saturday from 10 until 6 daily, and it's first come, first served. So don't miss out at McGinley's Furniture, Portling Business Park, Letterkenny.
Highland Radio Time Checks brought to you by EirGrid, the operator and developer of Ireland's electricity grid. EirGrid, powering up communities, powering up Ireland. The time is?
The time is now almost 18 minutes past 11. Now, on the 1st of February 1979, Ireland introduced legislation that made the wearing of seatbelts mandatory for front seat passengers and drivers. 46 years later, and almost 6,000 Irish people are caught not wearing a seatbelt. Now, we are joined to discuss this by Cynthia Newmerku, MEP. Good morning to you.
Welcome, Michaela. That's Clarke.
Can you hear me there?
I can
indeed. Yeah, perfect.
Great to be speaking to you.
You too. This is no doubt very worrying. I thought we would be past this.
I certainly thought we would past it as well when you mentioned that 1979 we introduced legislation. I kind of remember that. I was born in 66. So I would have been in primary school at the latter end, and I remembered the seatbelts going into the car because prior to that we didn't wear the seatbelts and we slept in the back window of the car and we slept on the back seat of the car, and it wasn't all that safe. But of course, since then, we've had a huge increase in people driving on the roads, a huge increase in safety issues. And unfortunately, Michaela, we've had a huge increase in deaths. And the Road Safety Authority analysis shows that I looked at shows that Irish collision data proves that 22% of car users killed between 2019 and 2023, they weren't wearing a safety belt. So that's a huge percentage killed because of no safety belt. It's almost a quarter of people who are involved in collisions. And then, unfortunately, people who are seriously injured in cars, it shows that 7% of them were not wearing a safety belt at the time of the collision. So it is the difference between life and death, and it is unfortunate. And I'm calling for more action in relation to the fact that, as you say, up to 6,000 people caught not wearing their safety belts in figures released by Garda Síochána to me. Huge increase in Galway, 95%, huge increase in Kerry, 72%, and huge as well in Waterford, 57%. Donegal actually fared out all right.
Yeah, Donegal was among the lowest in the county. 44 prosecutions for not wearing a seatbelt in Q4 of last year. That still is potentially 44 fatalities. That's the worrying point.
That is the worrying point. And we do know that 79 people have died on our roads as of June 2024 this year. It's slightly down on the same time last year, which was 81. But we're talking about cyclists and pedestrians and passengers and drivers. And think about, Michaela, all the families that are left behind to deal with the bereavements. And I know it only too well because, unfortunately, my own dad was killed while he was crossing the road many years ago. So, in 1977, to go back to those 70s, those years in the 70s when the law was introduced, the deaths were seen in numbers of, a couple of 100, but it has just grown exponentially, and we only have to turn on the radio or turn on the TV and we hear about a death almost as a daily occurrence. So look, I think we need to up the Garda presence, and I know that Mr. Jim O'Callaghan is working hard on recruiting extra Gardaí, and obviously it will be difficult to have everybody who's not wearing a seatbelt detected by a Garda, by a person, but the tech is there now to detect those not wearing safety belts, such as it does in relation to speeding motorists, and the tech needs to be funded and needs to be rolled out.
And I suppose the question has to be asked as well, why is this road safety message not getting through? You discussed there, an increase in Garda presence, but this is something that has been ongoing now for quite some time.
Yes, I think people feel or think they will get away with it. Now, Michaela, I don't know whether you've covered the drink driving aspect of road safety as well, but again, from what my constituents are writing to me about, people feel they can get away with drink driving, they can get away with speeding, they can get away with not wearing safety belts. So it is about the enforcement side of the law. And people need to know that they will be caught. If they break the law, they will be caught. They will be brought before the district court, the circuit court, or whatever court. They will be fined and prosecuted. But I think people feel that they won't be caught and they're simply taking a chance. In other cases, of course, and I would reach out to the listeners who would never dream of taking a chance and shouldn't dream of taking a chance, just listeners who might be under pressure with children strapping them into a safety seat or into a booster seat, just make sure you can operate the seat, that you give yourself time to actually clasp and belt in your child properly, because your child is so vulnerable, and particularly infants, make sure that they are positioned backwards in their safety seat.
And in terms of the prosecution, particularly in relation to not wearing seatbelts, is there a high volume of prosecutions as well?
Yes, I don't have data for the high level of prosecutions, because I think what happens is when somebody is detected, when somebody is prosecuted, they tend to pay the lesser fine of €120 and get the 3 penalty points instead of facing an increased fine for non-payment, or indeed far more higher penalty points, 5 penalty points if it's brought before court and you're convicted. So they tend to get on with it and pay it. But the problem is that not enough people are being caught and detected and prosecuted for this.
And most of us now, the majority of cars, have that beeping sound. We've come a long way in terms of vehicles that even Bluetooth, most cars, no matter what age they are, have Bluetooth, and they have the seatbelt warning. That people are obviously just ignoring this as well.
Yes, and from what I'm hearing from my constituents, unfortunately, is that people are actually clasping the belt in. They're putting it into the clasp, but then they're sitting on it, or they're putting it behind the seat. This is ridiculous type of behaviour. I don't know what is in people's heads, whether it's the heat, they want freedom, they want to just break the law, but they are costing lives, and there should be no excuse for this type of bad behaviour, like speeding, like being distracted on your mobile phone, like doing other things, not indicating, not turning properly. Look, a motor car is it's a really strong piece of equipment to have on the road. We know what kind of destruction it can wreak on people's bodies, on people's lives, and we need to slow down. And I mean that, I suppose, mentally, when we get to the car, we need to remind ourselves, look, I'm stepping into something now that has the potential to do damage. I need to slow down. I need to be conscious. I need not to be distracted. And I always say to people, look out as well for the youngsters who have to drive, because the connectivity in terms of transport is just not there in every county, especially rural Ireland, where I'm from, in Ireland South. So look out for the novice and the learner drivers, and look out for the older drivers as well, because
it's about setting that example to younger drivers too.
Yes, absolutely. But I think, again, going back to the tech to detect people not wearing safety belts is what we need. But we also need tech whereby maybe the car wouldn't start if your safety belt is not engaged. Now, of course, it can be engaged behind the seat, so that may defeat it. But perhaps there could be a smart way of the safety belt and the tech indicating it's not actually placed across somebody's chest, and therefore we can't start the car. A bit like the alcohol interlockers that I spoke about during the campaign last year when I was trying to get elected, which was to try and cut down on drink driving, which has been rolled out in several countries in the EU and has been successful. You simply can't start the car unless you blow into the interlocker and prove that you don't have alcohol on board.
And in terms of your role then as an MEP, do you believe that there needs to be Europe-wide regulation, or are there other parts of the continent that have something in place?
Yes, they do. The interlockers that I've spoken about and the detection of non-wearing of safety belts is there in other countries. Rules to do with road safety and transport are obviously a national competency, as well as getting regulations to do with travel that I've been working on. For example, air passenger rights in the case of a travel company going into liquidation, or travel rights for persons of reduced mobility. But once these directives are enacted in Europe, and can I just say, these directives and laws do have a meaningful effect on people's lives in Donegal, on people's lives down in my constituency in Ireland South as well. But it's then up to the member state to enforce them and to bring them into national law, and to look at best practice around Europe. But unfortunately, there's no Europe-wide practice that can be agreed and implemented and, could I say, foisted upon a member state. An opportunity has to be given to the member state to actually enforce the directive or the law in the best manner it sees fit. And obviously that will come down to budget and investment and recruitment and all of that. But I do know, and I have great faith in the present Minister for Justice, Jim O'Callaghan, because he's very committed to the justice brief and particularly to this area of road safety, as I am because I'm on the Transport Committee here in the Parliament.
And do you see this being something that could be implemented in the near future, or in relation to policy, will this take quite a while?
Well, I'm calling for it to be implemented, and I can't control the timeline. I can't control budgets, but what I can do is advocate for something that could be investigated, and not only could be but should be, because if we're going to have a short-term shortage of An Garda Síochána as we recruit them, we're in the middle of a recruitment drive, and it will take time to build up our stock to that extra 5,000 Gardaí in the country, then it is incumbent upon all of us legislators and lawmakers and politicians to be looking at other aspects and tools that are available to us. And we only have to mention the word AI, and we can see how much tech has progressed in the last 12 months, for example. So the tech is getting more and more sophisticated as time goes by. And really, I don't want more families to be left bereft without their loved ones. And I certainly don't want them left minding a loved one who is now confined to a wheelchair and maybe who cannot work, who has no independent mobility and so forth. Families are very badly affected.
And do you think that there is that responsibility further on the driver then? We hear the ads about ensuring that all passengers are wearing seatbelts. This is a serious issue, and I suppose it safeguards, if there were to be a crash, that it safeguards all passengers then.
Yes, exactly. And again, look, we teach people to learn how to drive, and they do now the theory test and the actual practical test and all of that. But perhaps there should be retesting, and particularly for people who, again, are found in breach, not only of wearing safety belts, being prosecuted for that, but in terms of speeding or in terms of other offences, whether it's dangerous or careless or driving. They should be made to re-sit again and reminded, look, you cannot just adopt and maintain bad practices. But again, back to the tech, and I'm not a tech expert, but wouldn't it be great in terms of an accident if, it could be detected as to who's wearing safety belts and who's not? It's mainly doctors who tell us that, because they know from the injuries that they examine and that they treat on the person that unfortunately is maimed or in bad circumstances has passed away as a result of the collision. But really, we should be, I suppose, advertising the message more. And in fairness to the RSA, they mounted several very successful campaigns, but I think we need to keep driving the message home on a daily basis.
Yeah. Fianna Fáil MEP for Ireland South, Cynthia Newmark, thank you so much for joining me this morning. Just give you a review of the Donegal figures there again. So Donegal had 44 prosecutions for not wearing a seatbelt in Q4 2024 alone. 30 people were prosecuted for not wearing seatbelts in Q3 2024 over a 3-month period, and 54 people were prosecuted in Q2 2024 over a 3-month period again for not wearing a seatbelt in Donegal. A couple of comments on that matter. Airbags are designed to work in conjunction with seatbelts. Without a seatbelt, an airbag can actually cause more harm than good, as the occupant is not in the correct position for the airbag to provide optimal protection. And another listener asks, what about people who are videoing themselves while driving for social media? Yeah, I do think that is crazy. And you see that more and more often now. People coming along, or people voice noting as well, because sometimes it doesn't work through your Bluetooth, and you can clearly see somebody voice noting on their phone while driving along. Obviously, nothing is more important than road safety. So whatever the voice note is, I'm sure it could wait. Accidents involving unbelted individuals often require more extensive emergency services, diverting resources from other potential emergencies, a listener says. If we introduced lifetime bans, it would be more effective. Yeah, obviously, there does need to be greater sanctions as it relates to that. It's just, what would be the biggest deterrent, as Cynthia Newmark was saying, people are opting to just take the €120 fine and the 3 penalty points. So it's more or less a slap on the wrist, whereas opposed to if they were hauled before their courts and, their names then out in the public. That would be maybe more of a deterrent to them. We'll be back shortly.
Watch the show live now on YouTube, Facebook and at highlandradio.com.
I was in pain with my right hip going to different countries on a flight. With the pain I was in wasn't really an option. I googled hospitals in Belfast and Kingsbridge came up.
Republic of Ireland residents can get rapid access to cross-border surgeries at Kingsbridge private hospitals in Belfast and Derry, with medical costs reimbursed by the HSE. Find out more at kingsbridgeprivatehospital.com/cross-border. Kingsbridge, your fast track to 5-star care. Terms and conditions apply.
Join me, Marty Free, listen every Friday night from 8 for Rockin' Hits on Highland Radio in association with Arena 7 Letterkenny. Try their new interactive dartboards with lots of games that all the family can play. See arena7.ie.
Big summer sale at Evolve Clothing Letterkenny Retail Park. Hundreds of suits from only €50 and a turn of shirts at half price. Open 7 days. Shop in store or online at evolveclothing.com. When it's gone, it's gone.
Maple are celebrating 7 amazing years in business, and it's all thanks to you. Join us on Thursday, July 17th for our Customer Appreciation Day at your local Maple store. Whether it's Derrybeg, Milford, Castlefin, Falcarra, Carrigart, Burtonport, Ballyliffin or Moville, you're welcome to join in the celebrations. For every coffee purchased on the day, we'll donate 50 cents to Cancer Care West. It's our way of giving back with your support. See you at your favourite Maple on July 17th. Maple, fresh, convenient, local.
Irish summers, eh? If only we were guaranteed the weather. But what is guaranteed is the €1 million One Lotto Plus player must win this Saturday, July 5th. That's €1 millionaire, guaranteed, whatever the weather. So, rain or shine, play Lotto with Plus for your chance to win. The National Lottery. It could be you. Play responsibly. Play for fun.
A listener says, I went online to book a few days away in Dunfanaghy for 3 adults on a 4-day trip. Not one place was available under €1,000. It's ridiculous. Yeah, that's a huge cost. That would take somebody on quite a good holiday. Has anybody else had a similar experience? Have you priced somewhere locally and has it been absolutely astronomical in terms of price? We were talking about housing with Councillor Jerry McMonigal at the start of this show. A listener says Jerry has referred to the crash in 2008 as a reason for Donegal County Council's failure to build social houses. He's referred to a lack of finance from government and he's referred to defective blocks in the area causing delays. He has not referred to the fact that there has been a €4 billion housing fund available to the council to draw from since 2014. Councils must present plans to the Department of Housing to draw from that fund. In fact, the council did draw from that fund to purchase houses in Buncrana that it was aware had defective blocks. Jerry also failed to mention that the county development plans put forward over the past decade have all failed to have any social housing in them. So the council has serious plans to rebuild social housing. It's just excuse after excuse from the councillors who have abject failed to deliver on social housing while in the middle of a defective block crisis. Another listener says, I lost my wedding ring of 36 years over the weekend in Dunfanaghy. It's of great sentimental value. A reward is offered if found. It's a men's ring with an inscription. It was lost in Dunfanaghy somewhere in the town on Saturday or Sunday morning. If you come across or you have already come across a ring, get in touch with us here and we'll put you in touch with the owner. Joined now on the line by Emma Gova, the wee Donegal mommy. Good morning, Emma.
Good morning, Michaela. How are you?
I'm good, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we're chatting again about Letterkenny University Hospital, this time in relation to the emergency department. What was the situation there yesterday, Emma?
Do you know what? My heart went out to the staff yesterday. It was so busy. My daughter was taken in yesterday. Some of my followers know she has complex medical needs, and she became very unwell yesterday. And hats off to staff. They do always treat her with such care and dignity. And the doctors and nurses are fabulous with her. But I just felt so bad for them. You know, it was just trolley to trolley, chair to chair yesterday when we went in. And like, for example, the ambulance crew that was with us, they stood with us for 2.5 hours before they could hand off.
Oh my God.
And there was just trolleys in front of us, trolleys behind us with ambulance crews waiting to hand off. And you know, it's not I want to stress it is not any fault of the staff at all. There was just no beds. There was no cubicles available. I mean, at one stage I counted 15 trolley chairs with people in them, inclusive of what was in the cubicles. And that wasn't including what was on the other side of the door in the waiting area. You know, and it's just, I don't know how to do it, to be honest. But, you know, something, when you listen to the likes of Dr. Michaela, and he's top of his field. He's very, very highly qualified doctor, saying that we have 18 months before this hospital becomes non-functioning.
Yeah.
And we need
very
to be
worrying.
taking this seriously. Because, you know, for example, Michaela was rushed in yesterday with back-to-back epileptic seizures. She'd had 5 seizures yesterday. And I thought to myself, if this hospital is non-functioning in 18 months' time, and it becomes like Enniskillen, what happens? Where are we supposed to go? Where we, you know, how are you going to blue light her to Sligo?
But I'm sure many would argue that already it's obviously not functioning. It's non-functioning in certain capacities. You know, you had to wait in an ambulance with your daughter before, you know, even care was provided.
Well, no, in fairness, we were taken straight into the ED,
right?
Because she was unwell, and we were in the corridor just outside of the resource department. And I have to say, from the minute we went in, the nurses and doctors were there. They were making sure that, you know, she was stable and that she was okay. And thank God.
So she was in the ED in total 2.5 hours, was it?
No, she was 2.5 hours on the ambulance stretcher before she was able to hand it over to the actual ED staff. Now, the ED staff, don't get me wrong, were coming up and down. They were, you know, doing bloods, getting lines in. But you see, what people don't realise is that once the ambulance, well, some people don't realise, a lot of people do, is when the ambulance crew is there, unless there is a bed for their patient to go into or a trolley chair for their patient to go into, they can't leave their patient. So, for example, an ambulance was tied up with us for about 2.5 to 3 hours yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And that means 2.5 to 3 hours that ambulance can't go to another call.
Yeah,
so if somebody's having a cardiac arrest in Mallinhead, do you know what I mean? And it's not the ambulance crew's fault. But then that's what happens is then calls go to ambulance crews outside the county then if there's none left in the county. But what happens in the next county then when they, you know, it's just this knock-on ripple effect.
Yeah, an entire knock-on effect. And I know there was one case where an ambulance was called and they were simply told that there was no ambulance available. And, you know, and on that occasion they were able to go to the hospital themselves. But, you know, there's plenty of issues or plenty of cases where, you know, say that cardiac arrest, for example, that, you know, you need that ambulance on the scene as soon as possible and it's a life or death situation.
Well, for example, we were lucky that an ambulance was available for us yesterday. By the time the ambulance had come to us, she had already been 4 seizures in. And we were lucky they got to us pretty sharp. The GP service had called them. But what if they had been tied up with somebody else and we couldn't get that ambulance? Because, you know, by the time we were travelling up the road, Michaela was cyanotic. Her hands were turning blue. Her mouth was turning blue. You know, we had sirens and blue lights going up the road. And I just dread to think what's going to happen now. And I've been listening all week, you know, as I'm doing my bits and pieces around the house, looking after the kids. And, I have 4 children, 3 have additional needs, 2 have complex medical needs. And I was listening to Dr. Michaela and I've been listening to Dr. Anne Keaton and listening to Greg discussing, you know, what's going to happen if we don't get the investment that's needed. And the reality is, Michaela, what's going to happen is it's going to cost lives. It's going to cost lives in Donegal. And I pray to God it's not my child's life it costs because she has complex medical needs. And we don't have that, I wouldn't even say luxury. I don't like to use the word luxury for any patient travelling, you know. But for example, if I'm going up and down to the hospital to her now, I am 20 to 25 minute commute from my home, right? I can go up and down. I can go back and forward and do what I have to do at home as well as being in there looking after Michaela. But if this hospital becomes non-functioning and our next hospital is Sligo, that's turning my commute into an hour and 50 minutes each way. How and under God am I supposed to be able to travel up and down to my other children with additional needs, as well as give Michaela the care she needs? And in those situations where we have a really serious emergency, are we going to be an hour and 50 minutes from the next functioning hospital in a year and a half.
And you shouldn't have
And,
to
you know,
live
I
with
don't
that
think-
fear, You mentioned their luxury. It isn't a luxury, but we should have access and timely access to care and the resources in place. But living then yourself with that fear, if a medical emergency should arise, where do you have to travel to?
This is what I thought last night. I saw a post shared by Greg Hughes saying that Michael Healy-Rae had confirmed that Marion Harkin had secured this hub for Sligo. Now, I have talked to all of our Donegal TDs at some point throughout the week about, the real concerns that I have as a parent of children with complex medical needs and the concerns that other people have related. We had a woman reach out to me last week after Marion Harkin had been on the Highland Radio Show, and she had said to me her mother is 87 and she travelled out of the county once to Sligo for treatment, and she's not fit to do it. She can't do it again. But the reality is that these are the questions that we need answered. If we don't get this,
and it's a scary thought thinking, will that woman now, will she just not receive her care? Will she make the decision, she's not fit to travel the long distance?
Her daughter has said. Her daughter has said that she just will not go. She's 87. She'll just take her chances. And for the likes of us, as I said to my husband yesterday, I sat in the ED yesterday, and I have to be honest, the staff in the ED are absolutely amazing, and they're so good to her. I have to be honest with you, they really are. Because they know her and the care that they do give her, and I watched them treat her with such dignity yesterday.
And that's also another reason, Emma, why you wouldn't want to go to another hospital. They're obviously aware of your daughter's care.
And they know her, and they're good to her, and the compassion and the empathy they show her. She has a heartbreaking condition, and we watched her deteriorate over the years, and it's been horrible to watch her lose that independence. But they've always tried to treat her with such dignity and humanity, and to think that that we may not get that, and we're going to end up back at square one with people. I mean, these are people who have been treating her since she was a child, a baby. You know what I mean? And often have said to me, is it amazing that she's got this far? And to think now that I'm supposed to start from scratch, and the real fear that I had yesterday in the pit of my stomach, I emailed I texted all our TDs last night, and I said, if this decision isn't reversed, it's going to cost lives. And I'm not saying that to scaremonger people, but I pray
No, but it is,
not my child's life.
The reality.
Because if we are an hour and 50 minutes away, and she's 5 seizures in, and she's turning cyanotic, are we supposed to go on to Sligo? What are we supposed to do?
Yeah, I know it's.
And I would plead with those who are lobbying for the hospitals who have said that they're not going to throw in the towel. I spoke with Minister Charlie McConnell on Saturday, and he assured me that he was not throwing in the towel on this, and that nothing had been set in stone. A decision had not been made. I spoke with Pat Cook Gallagher's office. I spoke with Charles Ward last night via text. I spoke with Pierce Doherty and Patrick McLaughlin's office during the week. And the thing is, I'm pleading with them and those on the health forum, if they're listening today, I am absolutely pleading with them to not play Russian roulette with my child's life. This is my child's life, and it's other children's lives, and it's mothers and fathers and sons, and these are people's family members. They're not bargaining chips. These are people's loved ones. Our daughter is very much loved and valued member of our family, and I can tell you, I couldn't even bear thinking about her not being with us. So I am pleading with them, absolutely pleading with them, to not let this go. I mean, if there has to be a surgical hub in Sligo, then you know what? Then there's going to have to be one in that.
Yeah, has to be too.
It's not just about the surgical hub. It's that if we don't get that investment, we can't attract the doctors, and if we can't attract the doctors, we will become downgraded.
Yeah.
And people like Michaela rely on this hospital as a lifeline. This hospital has saved her life on more than one occasion.
Yeah, and there's so many.
In that hospital have saved her life on more than one occasion. And I dread to think what will happen if we don't have a functioning hospital within half an hour from us, because we can't make her 50 minutes if she's having multiple seizures, or if in the past she's had a respiratory arrest because of her epilepsy, or she's in respiratory distress. We don't have an hour and 50 minutes.
No, and Emma, you're not alone in this. There's so many people that are in the same situation, and so many people living in fear. I know the Donegal doctors are meeting with the health minister later today, so we'll see what comes out of that. Thank you so much for joining us, Emma.
Thank you so much for your time, Michaela. I appreciate it.
That is Emma Gova there, the wee Donegal mommy, and as I said, she's definitely not alone in her concerns raised there, and the politicians within Donegal have committed to keep raising the need for the surgical hub to be located in Donegal, and we'll see what comes out of that meeting with Health Minister Jennifer Carroll McNeill and the Donegal doctors later today, and we'll bring you that as we get it. We'll be back shortly.
Rossview Interiors in Letterkenny are delighted to offer a limited quantity of sofas just in at unbelievable knockdown prices, with suites reduced from €2,050 to €1,250 and corner suites from just €1,350. There's also storage beds down from €650 to €450 and huge savings on a selected range of dining sets. So make your way to Rossview Interiors, Rossview Business Park, Letterkenny, just off the Polestar roundabout, as these bargains won't last.
Luxury is not merely seen or heard or even touched. True luxury is experienced. It lies in the minute details that elevate the ordinary into the extraordinary. It's quiet spoken, but leaves a lasting impression. You know it when you feel it. Luxury begins with L. Lexus. Experience amazing. Discover the all-electrified range at Lexus Letterkenny.
Organ donation saves and transforms lives. A change in Irish law means that if you are an adult, you will now be considered an organ donor when you die. The choice to become an organ donor is yours, but it's important that your loved ones know your wishes. A register is available for those who would like to opt out of organ donation. Visit hse.ie/organ donation or call HSE Live on 1800 700 700 to find out more. From the HSE.
Highland Radio weather updates with McElhenny's. Find all your summer essentials from fashion and accessories to beauty and homeware at McElhenny's. Explore more in-store or shop online at mcelhennys.com today.
Today's weather largely dry with isolated showers and sunny spells. Sunshine will become more widespread this afternoon. Highest temperatures of 15 or 16 degrees in light north to northwest winds. Now, we continuously hear about the lack of electric vehicle infrastructure. So you would imagine a new car park being developed would include EV charging points, and that would have been at top of the priority list. I'm joined now by Councillor Michael McClafferty. Good morning, Councillor.
Morning, Michaela, how's things?
Good, but this unfortunately hasn't been the case in Dunfanaghy.
No, to be fair, Michaela, the background of things out here, the council developed a brilliant car park there in Dunfanaghy there a couple of years ago or so now. I think maybe 3 years this winter actually. But anyway, the car park was done so unaccepted. A provision was left at the time for the possibility of 2 charging points. There is a facility there, or the wiring's there now for that. But then when we looked into it then, after time went by, then there were no sign of charging points arriving, so I inquired into it then, what was happening to the charging points. And basically between the council then and the ESB, it fell between 2 stools, because there's a huge amount of money involved here apparently to get this connected, upwards of heading towards 100,000 actually, to get them connected. And the reality is then just neither one was in a position then to pay for it. So where we stand at the minute, further on from inquiries to that now, I understand the council are seeking to see can they get funds to try and get it going, but that's where it's at the minute. But really and truly, Michaela, to be fair, I think when it's charging points, the ESB should step in and just pay for it.
And surely this cost should have been considered, prior to the, included in the plans for the car park.
It should have, Michaela, yes, but to be fair, it should have, all right, I agree with you. But I think that was the elephant in the room when push come to shove. The cost was the problem at the end, up unknown to me, because obviously the car park was started then. Like there was no flagging up of this at the time. We just assumed everyone was going to roll on like normal, and that wasn't the case then. When the car park was finished, then tired everything else, I quickly realised then, hang on here, there's no sign of these charging points coming. Mm-hmm. And when I questioned it then, queried it then, that was the problem then. Like, so as I say at the minute, I understand the councillors are trying to seek funding for it, but even at that could still be some time away. So obviously the ESB have washed their hands off it. They've thrown it back to the council. If the council can't get appropriate funding, we'll have no charging points.
And is there any other charging points in the Dunfanaghy area?
Not well, apart from not public ones that are not public ones. There will be ones here and there, possibly at private houses, but not public ones, Michaela, that you can pull into. Or certainly not public ones that I'm aware of, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Unless any business. I got one recent times unknown to me, on a private/public basis for customers, whatever. There's none that I'm actually aware of. The only other ones that I am aware of is the Wild Atlantic Camp there in Chrysler. Rorty's Atlantic Camp there in Chrysler for the caravan, so on. They have multiples of them there. Next to that then would be Falcara car park then Falcara behind the Bank of Ireland. There's a couple of them there. Moving on from that then, the car park in Falcara too above Centre. There's one there as well. Moving on from that then, I'm not sure about Guidor, Dunlow, I understand.
But yeah, if you had an electric vehicle and you were visiting Dunfanaghy, you couldn't effectively charge your car there. That's the way it stands at the minute.
That's the bottom line, and it is hampering hell, Michaela, out of things with the Wild Atlantic Way, obviously. And this is actually a bit of a fall down the whole way along the Wild Atlantic Way. Speaking to people there last week as well, people from Belfast and that were visiting here last week as well, we had a long conversation about EV points, charging points, etc., electric cars. And they were saying even for themselves up around home, they're grand and around Belfast generally and around the north, so they're okay, providing you're in the city. But if you leave the city then go from Belfast or some other city a long run, again it falls down too, rarely. There's no charging points along the way. It is a big problem, and it's not helping ourselves tourist-wise. It's not helping West Donegal tourist-wise, because people going from wherever, as I say, landing here, people landing here not planning their route, although I'm sure pretty much most people will. But for the odd ones that don't, like for example, I heard Donald there mention yourselves, your own colleague, several times about, I think it's his own brother's electric car, and he goes from Dublin to wherever they live at. There's no problem at all, because there are plenty of charging points on the route that he uses. But that's not the case here in Donegal. It's not the case in the Wild Atlantic Way. And the other problem is here as well, Michaela, too.
And is this something that, I know we're talking about Dunfanaghy specifically, but has the council made any progress on, including plans for additional EV charging points?
No,
right across the county.
Not that I'm aware of. The big thing is here, Michaela, the whole thing with EV charging points. You recall a few years ago, the government gave a commitment that time that they were to roll out, I think it was 1,100 charging points right across the country. Once that was mentioned, then, well, obviously, every local authority then, or whoever it may be, business person alike, is depending then on this statement then of the 1,100 charging points being rolled out. So they're going to hold back then on that. That hasn't happened. I would say, as we told, they didn't roll out 150 at this stage, never mind 1,100. And it is causing huge problems. The other problem is as well here with the electric car too, Michaela, two problems actually. Number one, it takes a long time to charge it. On a public point, it could take 40 minutes to charge it. Secondly to that then as well, the more electric cars you get in the area, the more pressure is putting on the grid. I was speaking to an engineer there last night, and he was saying to me, if the electric charging points or the electric cars increase by another 1% percentage in sales, it'll put that much power or that much demand apparently on the grid locally that the grid won't hold it, won't stick it, and it's gonna cause problems. It could lead to blackouts and so on. This is the reality. Our infrastructure here, our electricity.
Yeah, right across the board, it's not ready to facilitate this.
No, not. Unfortunately, no. While people may agree with electric cars, they're a good job for those that have them, and I'm sure they enjoy to have them, but for the likes of ourselves here early in Donegal, they're no go. The hybrid is a much more attractive buy at the minute for many people here living rurally, because at least if the electric runs out, you have the backup of the petrol itself to get you to wherever, A to B and so on, or at least at another petrol station. I had a situation there one night too where a lady ran out. She had 40 miles. She had 40 miles left on her dashboard of electricity, and her 60 miles to her journey. And only for a guard helped her. She wasn't bothered. Like, she was going to be left in the middle of nowhere. 2:00 in the morning. This is the kind of mad stuff going on. Like.
A listener says the cost of €100,000 seems excessive. How can that cost be justified? Is this the cost for the installation and the wiring up of all EV charging points?
Well, I don't know. That's what Dunfanny's facing anyway. I can't speak about them all.
And was this for the one or the two?
For the two of them.
For the two.
For the two of them, like that's what's facing for Dunfanny anyway. Like I can't speak on them all.
Yeah, but €50,000 each it's quite a cost.
Yeah, but this is the mad stuff like that's going on, Michaela. This is why the constitution of meth the way it is at the minute. It's a free for all. Like if you're dealing with a Pacific commodity, the sky's the limit what you can ask for it. And that's unfair too. Like, but it's also very unfair to people. People bought into this facility at the end up buying electric cars and everything else is the way to go. Many people bought them on the prejudice that just we're going to have points right around every corner. That's not the case.
No, definitely not.
It's going back now to bite people, obviously.
Well, Michael, hopefully ESB or the council comes up with the funding there, because obviously it's vital in the area. Ciarán of the Glenties Municipal District, Councillor Michael McClafferty, thank you for joining me. That's it for the 9 till noon show this morning. Thanks to Caroline Orr and Shannon Wilkin for all their help on this show. John Breslin is up next on Around the Northwest, and we'll be back tomorrow.
Make real summer savings at Super Value, like Super